Hey, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Witch Doctor. Here we have again for part 2, Miss Allie Rowan. How you doing this morning?
I'm very well. Looking forward to presenting what I've found.
Awesome. So last episode, we kind of got into your life a little bit. We got into how you were around some religious figures, some local, churches and whatnot, local groups, if you will. Then we got into the Greek discovery. Well, not the discovery, but learning more of the ancient Greek, the different forms, things like that. So without giving too much away, everybody, if you haven't seen part 1, go back, watch it real quick, and then come back, pick up where you left off. But we're going to let Allie just jump right into it. That way we can get all this information in a timely manner so that the episode isn't too long and you guys will watch the whole thing. So I really appreciate all the support from everybody lately. The comments have been off the wall, but I really appreciate the engagement. So without further ado, Miss Allie, take it away.
Okay. Now, Witch Doctor's very kindly recapped part of it, but I was very rushed at the end about trying to understand Armen Hillman and what he's presenting. And I've touched on the sincerely mistaken part, but I want to go back to that a bit more, possibly to do with neurology. Both Witch Doctor and I have got ADD. Marcel's dyslexic. I'm autistic as well. All of this helps change how we see information and how we process it. So obviously nobody's psychoanalyzed Armen, but as an observer, certain things perhaps are applicable. And he has already confessed that he is dyslexic. He's already said that himself. So can we pop in now to the presentation?
I did it too early.
I'm going to look at the sincerely mistaken part and go through how he's developed his ideas about burning purple and the vaginal communion, the drug production. So I want to look at that with a bit more compassion and say, has his mind just put stuff together and he actually believes that what he's seen is real? And then since people have pushed back, he started bullshitting about it to try and keep it real. Okay. But I'm just trying to explore the possibility that he honestly, genuinely saw what he thinks he's seen and then wrote up in a very prestigious journal. You don't do that if you've made something up. You do that because you want to present what you found, that you believe in. So Richard Carrier has recently gone through that and just found all the mistakes. And they are obviously there, but he feels that he was seeing a deeper meaning, a double meaning, the Vox Mystica or the Vox Orphica. And he, I think, really does believe that what he saw initially was authentic. So we'll go through now. And there's a couple of places where he is actually talking through his process publicly. So I want to recap through those and point out there's a mistake, there's a mistake, there's a mistake. And then he's put it together, but he's put a lot of mistakes together and then made his conclusion. So this is what we'll look at. Okay, so what I want to try and cover as fast as I can, looking at his vaginal mystery, the burning purple, and the semen communion. I've got a lot of information to get through. So we'll move on. And I want to be able to note that not only is it how he's processing, but he's also tied himself in to believing what he's seen from the muse. And it's more like a feeling. And I've heard him say in the past, did you hear that click? Or did you feel that click? He said. And we've all experienced it when we've been puzzling over something, and then suddenly, bang, yes, we see it. And that emotional rush with that sense of revelation could possibly be mistaken for the muse told me. all right, or I saw it from the muse. So I'll leave that as it is, and just listen to
through my experience. You can take it down just a little bit. Through my experience, I can tell you, I will research something. This is between you and me, Satanic Congregation. I will research something. I will ask the muse, show me. And she'll show me, and I'll take that and show that to people. And the people will take that to them, and the people will prostitute it. The people will sell it, whether it's for mugs or hats or reputation. They will sell it because there is money to be made. I will not prostitute the muse. I will not prostitute the muse. I'm so mad. Happens again and again and again, over and over and over. And there's only one problem. You know what happens in translation? Second law of thermodynamics, right? You're going to lose that energy. It's not going to be put into work. It's entropy. Every time you translate it. And when it leaves her lips, you cannot touch it. Once you touch it, you degrade it. You destroy it. You are a destroyer. Shame on you. Here's what we through.
Right, apologies for that one. That was on double speed. I hadn't realised when I was recording that was still on double speed, but the rest of them I think are 1.5.
They're running. They're running. And they should. They should, because I've studied my shit and I've gotten every word from the muse. So it's made it easy. I don't have to have any big brains. It makes it easy. And that's why everybody is running. Everyone is running. Can you believe we made Harvard run? Run, Harvard, run. Did I vote for a pedo? Do I go to church for a pedo? Do I pray to the God above?
Sorry about that.
For the sake of protecting his pedoing. Oh my God. Death and destruction. Blood. The prophet brings them to you because the prophet is being guided by the muse. Do you understand? Oh God. Oh, what do we see? We see reality. That's all, people. Did I vote?
Sorry about this, Stephen. I know what I need to do. Sorry, I couldn't find where I wanted to go back there. So sorry about that mess. You might have to get rid of that one. Right, as you can see, he's very much reliant on the muse, and this is from his deposition. And he says, he tries to explain what it is. It's a divinity that inspires poets. She's the voice of inspiration. It goes on further, but he believes in his muse. He wouldn't be talking about it in the deposition in a court of law unless it was something he was sincerely believing in. So this isn't just guff. For him, it's very real. And in what way is it real for him? We know he's had a very strong reaction to cannabis. In part 1, I didn't really get to show it, and I won't show it now, but if you want to look at my first interview, no, it's my second interview with What Your Pastor Didn't Tell You, and that was now in Armen Hillman Unmasked, and it's the video called Exposed. And I went through an email that he'd sent somebody where he'd had cannabis, shared it with her, same amount. She had no reaction.
If I had not had
the effect he had was astonishing. He thought he saw his dead wife in her face. He thought he saw somebody walking into the room and sitting with her. It was quite remarkable what he was seeing just on cannabis. And we know that he takes cannabis regularly. It's his sacramental drug. That's what it said in that bit of the deposition. And it's something that he sits on the throne, and it is something regular for him. And we can see the effect it has on his mind. Now, he may have had strong stuff in the past and he's not doing it anymore, but whatever. This is somebody explaining the effect that can happen when you've had some strong hallucinations.
Those experiences, but I just had a few of the blissful, transcendent ones. I understand how I very easily could have thought that I had been chosen to be on a mission, because that sort of thinking did come around in the earlier stages. And the reason for that for me was that I had grown up a certain way. And then all of a sudden I grew up in a very small white suburban community. And then all of a sudden I'm at an extremely racially diverse college campus with thoughts and ideas and music and the cultures of so many different people. And my mind was being blown open anyway. And then here you go with these substances and you just feel this sense of transcendence and overwhelmingness. And I can understand how people think they are sent on a mission or something of that nature.
I don't even like that. I have a friend like that he's all about the Hail Satan stuff, and I thought it was all a joke, and he was a good dude. But then the more I got to know this dude, he was a dark person. He was self-centered, and there was something dark there.
Yeah.
So there's something. Yeah, that I'm not gonna talk crap right now because some people watch this know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But he's like Orlando, where he thinks he's like some prophet or something.
Yeah, that bothers me. Yeah,
he's messed up.
People worship this.
Yeah, he's
they see it and they're like, this is different. I like it.
Yeah,
I'm gonna get
he's
into
got
it.
a following like that.
Yeah.
He gets thousands of people watching him when he's live.
Yeah,
Look, I used to love this dude. We were friends and stuff, but then he stopped talking to me because I believed something different than he did.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, you believe? It was it was like I had to follow him fully.
He's like, red flag, blue flag.
Right. No, but this is the type of person who is so dogmatic about what he believes in that if you don't believe in what he believes in, you are. He told me I needed to be purged. Right. That was the last time I talked to him. That was the last time I talked to him. He said, you need to be purged. I'm going to tell you this right now. Everyone who's watching is going to know exactly what I'm talking about. So I'm just going to give it up. There's a debate. It's not really a debate. Scholars believe that the Old Testament was written in Hebrew, translated into Greek. That's what everyone. It's true. That's what happened. There's this one PhD Greek expert who thinks it was the other way around, that the Greek came first and the Hebrew was a translation. Now, I've weighed these arguments as hard as I can because I wanted to know if he was right. I became friends with this guy. I wanted to know if he was correct. And I weighed these arguments and I really, really gave him the benefit of the doubt. Trying to find out, listen to his arguments, followed him all the way to the end. Is the Greek the original or is the Hebrew the original? And he was wrong. He's just flat wrong. There's just so much evidence that the Hebrew came first. When he found out that I believed the opposite thing as him, he told me I needed to be purged and never talk to me again.
Damn. He sounds like a flat earther or something.
Yeah. Now, this guy's a Greek wizard, though. He's an actual PhD. He used to be a professor. He got fired for going too hard in school. He was teaching. He was going way too hard.
Accepting new information.
He got fired. Now, I read the reports about when he got fired. It was like 2008 or something. He got fired from a Catholic university. He was a teacher of the Greek classics. And the students had his back. They're like, he was a great teacher. So I was like, I had his back too. And I still have a lot of respect for this dude, but he's so dogmatic. He's so far. He won't even talk to me unless I believe everything he believes. So I can't talk to him like that.
Good, smart.
Yeah.
Good on you.
But anyways,
So for someone who's like,
but he's like Orlando though. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
He's like Orlando. He's got a personality of that he thinks he's like a chosen one. You know what I'm saying? He thinks he's like a special person getting inspiration from the divine muse.
Have you ever seen? There's like an Indian guy who does that.
All right. Neil was a little bit inaccurate with, he was fired from St. Mary's for sexual harassment. He broke his contract and, he had to go. Anyway, I will carry on with some things that Armen has talked about.
In order to power this greed machine, you must sacrifice your children. What kind of God is your monist God? Your monist God demands the blood of children. And why am I empowered to tell you this right now at this moment in history? Because the muse must always sing. What I am telling you about your Jesus is that he was using drugs. He was using drugs on little kids to do things that involve sexuality. Jesus Christ was arrested in a public park with a naked kid. And I'm trying to let the victim have a voice. Do you understand? People laughed when I said I'm a transdimensional attorney, right? You have no rights anymore. It's too late. It's too late. It's like a kid and a priest. That special relationship will never be forgotten. And those people will always want justice. Do I have a personal relationship with Jesus? You better believe it. We've already been wrapped up together into history, so you better believe it.
So you mean that in the sense that like someone that loved Shakespeare's works and was just a master of it would say they have a personal relationship with Shakespeare, not that they're calling Shakespeare a god or divine figure or something. It's just it's part of your story at this point.
There's a deeper level than that. You and I both know that. I was given a talk once, and a guy came up to me at the end of the talk. This is in Gloucester, and it was a gentleman who had been molested, not just molested, raped raped full on by a priest. And it was one of the priests that first broke. They made a movie about this guy. I didn't know. He just walked up to me. And at that, it was Boston, that old Boston breaking of the child rape with the priests. Anywho, he was crying. He came up to me after talking, he was crying. And I had been giving a talk on ritual rape in the early church. And he, with tears in his eyes, he came up to me and he said, "You don't know what you've done." And I said, I'm sorry, what is it? And he said, "You have tapped into the heart of what they do." He said, "I saw in my priest rapist eyes exactly what came out of your mouth." And all I was doing, I wasn't giving him ideas, or academic foolery. All I was giving him were the texts on the ritual rape. All I was doing was bringing that out, reviving it for them to see historically. Does that guy have a personal relationship with Jesus? You darn straight he does. Will he ever lose that relationship? No. Will I? No. I've been there. Other people have been there. Julian the apostate, right, has been there, although he was kind of hiding the whole time because they just killed all his family. Never mind.
Well, I think you're using the idea of a personal relationship with Jesus in a slightly different way than I mean, but I think I understand. So as long as we're clear, we're not telling our audience that they're sinners in need of a savior and that Jesus' magic blood will save you. But going back to your story, could you tell us when you were looking at this?
Right. I'm not drawing any conclusions from that. But this talk that was it was not actually in Gloucester, it was in Boston, but it was the Gloucester Writers Group that he was talking at in 2018. And this was just at the point that Original Sin was published. And we know that's all about his erroneous theory about the baptism ceremony and the sodomy of the orphan boys and whatever else. That is, again, things that he's collected and put together wrongly. But anyway, that's something that to consider, why he's so determined to try and get to what he believes is the core of the dysfunction in the church regarding paedophilia. And it's come through his belief that Jesus was part of it. So I'm sure this is part driving what his obsession is, to get to the bottom of Mark 14, 51, 52. Anyway, we'll move on. Now, I'm not sure if I want to read all of this, but it's talking about the proposed connection between apophenia, which is where you make connections and think there's significance in connections when there isn't actually any connection. All right. But it's also the connection between that and dyslexia. All right. So you have stronger visual and holistic thinking. People with dyslexia often excel at visual spatial tasks, big picture thinking and pattern recognition. They may be less focused on sequential or detailed processing, which is what is required for reading and spelling. But the dyslexic advantage, the hypothesis, is some researchers, such as the LDs in their book, The Dyslexic Advantage, argue that the neurological differences in the dyslexic brain, while posing challenges for reading, also grant strengths in other areas. These strengths include pattern recognition, metaphorical thinking, and spatial reasoning. Okay. This enhanced ability to recognize patterns, even in complex or seemingly unrelated information, is precisely the definition of apophenia. So the argument is that the same cognitive wiring that makes reading a challenge can make an individual more adept at spotting patterns, which can manifest as apophenia. Apophenia as a generative mechanism. In 2025 article on the topic reframes apophenia not as a flaw, but as a generative and necessary cognitive mechanism. It suggests that this cognitive trait, when combined with the visual and spatial strengths often found in people with dyslexia, allows for creative and innovative problem solving. In this view, the patterns perceived may not always be factual in a traditional sense, but they can lead to new insights and ways of organizing information. So the summary is, in short, there is a theoretical and observational link suggesting that dyslexics may be more prone to apophenia. This isn't a negative trait, but rather a different way of processing information. The brain that struggles to decode letters in a linear fashion may be more skilled at seeing connections, relationships, and patterns that others might miss. Okay, so Whether or not that plays into it or not, I don't know, but I will leave that on the table.
I like that a lot. I can recognize some of my own patterns there.
Yeah, and to some extent, I can struggle with that, because when I see something, I'm aware of this, and this feed into it, and if I'm not careful, I will try and go off and pull everything else in at the same time.
It's great for story writing.
Yeah, not
Yeah.
that I'm. Yeah,
I've done fiction, and yeah, it's good for that. You can really think of some clever, and not to, but even my little article on Burning Purple, it itself shows the dyslexia that I have, and trying to just flow your thoughts a certain way. You can see it clear as day, But anyway, keep going.
Okay.
What is pros klusmasi? What is pros klusmasi? Remember the klusma, people? Here, this is the part where we need to look it up. Are you ready? People, what is the first thing we're starting out? We're starting out with something that's hypnotic. Sleep inducing, right? Sleep inducing. I want to bring you to La La Land tonight, baby. I brought the drugs that Jesus had. Are you ready? Oh, where did boom. Get there quick. Blow it up. You take it, Chewy. Oh, God, people. What kind of hypnotic drugs are we talking about tonight, people? Some of you may remember these drugs. What are these drugs? This is a liquid used for washing something out, especially a clister or a drench. What kind of things do doctors wash out? What kind of things do priests wash out? What kind of things does your grandmother wash out? We wash out. Go ahead and take it down. We wash out our anal or vaginal cavities. Do you understand? These are medicines, people, that are hypnotic, that must be applied to certain places. We are Christing now. Look at number 3 here. What else is that liquid for washing something out? That's particularly of the conitis, right? Or a hetaira. Do you know what a hetaira is? That is what you would so monistically call a prostitute. But I would say that is a companion.
Right. Did you notice on that one that it was on category 3? He's already jumped a long way from prosklusmata, which just literally means washes. All right. So from washes, we've now got to conitis.
And the kenidos is the catamite. Right. Now, look what the Victorian scholars gave for us. A lewd fellow, right? Oh, God. There's Herodian. That's grammatical stuff, right? That's the really good stuff. A public dancer, right? You can also refer to obscene poems, right? The conidoi, this obscene poems. It's a type of fish. Thank you, Pliny. Right? And it also is the conidian. Well, and then you see after that Galen. And that's where you should be interested, right? Okay, click on that because Galen's going to send us there. Do you have to refresh the screen? Okay, people, look. Conidian. What is a conidian? Uh-oh. It's the yunks. And it's the seisopugus. Now, this word pugus is the word for buttocks. And the seiso is like you get when you get a seismic wave. This is the jiggling of the buttocks. The jiggling of the buttocks dance. Isn't that nice? You mean they twerked in antiquity? Yes, of course they did, right? They twerked in antiquity. Go back to the twerking, please. In antiquity, the twerking. Oh, God. You put them in the wrong order. Okay. Oh, I guess. Okay. I'm sorry. Satanic congregation, meet conitis. Conitis, satanic congregation. Everybody, please give the conitis a shout out. Shout out. Shout out, right? What's his name? Who cares? Right? Who cares? Now, what were we talking about? We were talking about that medication that we're going to use to wash out our conitis. You got it? Okay.
Did you see how we jumped into that? This is washing. Yeah.
There.
Yeah, we haven't finished yet. There's another one to go. But also, did you notice how he pretended Chewie put it in the wrong order? He just wanted to introduce his usual favorite subject. Okay.
With the pictures. Yay, gosh.
Yeah, right.
Back to the text. Now, people, here's the 3 most important words I'm going to show you of all time. I'm not hyper exaggerating. This is not excessive hyperbole. Holy mackerel. Look at the first one in yellow. Christos. Christos, people. Do you see Jesus? He's looking at you right in the face. What is Jesus doing? We just saw conitis running around. Did we bring the hetaira, the companion who yields sexual favors? Yes, her too. Don't forget her too. We have to be able to wash them, right? So now we are Christing. What are we Christing? We are using the trochiskois, the pills, right? They make a compound formula, dry it into a pill. You then take that pill and rehydrate it, and there's your medicine. What kind of pills are these? These are pills that are Christ's, Christois, and what specifically? So the Christois tells you exactly how they're applied, right? And what effect do they have? They are hypnoticois. They are inducing the stupor. They are chasing the dragon. Do you understand? They are numbing. These are the numbing powers. They are using the opium. And you must Christ it, people, because that's just the way it's applied. Now, you're going to be surprised at what I'm going to Christ. Bring that conitis back in here.
Right. That particular clip completely nukes all of his Christing nonsense that he thinks he's going to defeat monism with. Did you see how he said, do you see Jesus there?
Right.
All right. Now, he's made up this word, Christing. It's a non-existent word, but he uses that word Christing so that you subconsciously connect it to Jesus.
Right.
And he's there pointed out, do you see Jesus there? That's exactly what he's doing. And he's let the cat out of the bag completely. You know, I knew that right from the beginning, but to actually hear him admitting it like that, it was quite a catch, I thought.
Right.
Yeah. So what does the text actually say? Here we are. Prosklusmasi is there, and they're just washes. Okay. Now, is there anything about drugs and cult and Canidus's, being abused in here? Okay. It is, and we have sleep-inducing lozenges topically. Now, that word topically is where they get the Christos from.
Okay.
That's all it is. Okay. And it topical means on the surface. You rub ointment on, you put your eye salve in, you put your oil on, you do your hair, you're putting it on the surface. That's all it means.
I see how.
So you can smear it. You can. The word creo, it's used for the verb's used for putting bitumen on a boat. It's used for makeup. It's used for plaster on a wall. It's used for paint. It's a word that, and oiling yourself for the gymnasium. It's not always a drug term, and it just means to smear, to rub.
Any kind of smearing, any kind of rubbing, any finger painting, any application of anything.
Yeah, there is another word also, alepho, which is similar. I'm not really sure why alepho is used for some and creo for others, but you're basically looking at just
different areas.
Yeah, but it literally just means put something on the surface. And a Christos is an ointment, basically. In fact, Christos is really it's a noun. It's an adjective. It just means surface application, topical.
Right.
All right. Anyway, we'll move on. So we have more Apophenia coming up. Now, here we've got where he has imagined Medea was putting in the purple into her vagina and doing all of this. What you see here is the footnote from one of Dr. Karl Ruck's books. And it's not even a footnote by quoting Karl Ruck, it's quoting this Dennis Delfino. And it's a personal communication, which later was found actually to be inaccurate. But Karl had popped it into his book in part of the explanation that says that a species of the murex was a source of the psychoactive DMT, which is where Armen has got his idea that it all gives you, throws you into this ecstatic state and you can prophesy because you've got the DMT from the murex. So that's one mistake he's made. And the other one here, he's just talking about how not to destroy the DMT by applying it topically, basically as a vaginal or otherwise dermal unguent. All right, and it would avoid the destruction of the DMT. All right, so this one little phrase here is where he's got the whole idea of a vaginal drug application. And it's not even, he's not saying that's what she was doing. But he's taken that and put it all into another aspect of where he's changed a word. And we're going to now look at that word. Oh, it's not there yet. Medea prepared drugs in her vagina. No, she didn't. And administered her own vaginal excreta as the communal burning purple of the Gnostic administration. No, she didn't. You've got all of this out of that one little footnote.
Which is incorrect also. They've tested it.
Incorrect.
DMT at all. In fact, that's what drove me crazy.
Yeah.
Writing the chapter on burning purple was I was like, there is nothing about DMT being in here. The concept, I get it, but there's just not there. My wife's a microbiologist. I can't go along with DMT being in something. And it's what they study in psychedelic investigation. So
yeah. You see, but the point is, it's not in the toxicology in antiquity. There's a footnote in there that says, look at the, well, it was on this one. No, hang on. All right. I've had to move on. I'm not getting this. I'll go back. That was there. Here, you see, this is from toxicology and in antiquity. This is a footnote in his toxicology in antiquity. For a current and death treatment of Medea's personal application of drugs, dermal or vaginal, see Carl Ruck. So having looked at that footnote, you then go into, it's page 381 and following, and you go into that, and this is about on page 383, and there's this footnote. So you've got a footnote to a footnote, which is by somebody else who got it wrong. So this is
right, and it's word of mouth.
Yeah, yeah.
Locker room talk.
Absolutely. So
speculation.
That actually has all of his imagination putting together, and then he's written it up as if it's a fact, but it's not. All right. Now, this is the other stream that he's bringing in. Why he's seeing it's in Medea's vagina. And it's again from other, here we've got the Latin, virginusque sinus, all right, which is, she fills, when it says virgin bosom, it can be, you're basically looking at her cleavage or the garment that she's wearing, and it's tucked in around the garment there. So that's what this is about.
He's writing magical work on Medea. And so I just want to bring that back up again. And I want to translate that for you. Okay. It's talking about Medea. And what is she doing? She is bringing out medicines from her kistis. You know, that sacred basket, you know, that the Maenads carry around, right? Yeah, she's going to it, and she's taking out of it death-bringing, text please, death-bringing, she's pulling out of the death-bringing container. Yeah, container is the best way to express it. The death-bringing container, she is bringing out these medicines. Yeah, what is that container? It's the harbor we're looking for, right? We're looking for a harbor. I thought you were, okay, well, now we've got a container. And from that death-containing thing, she brings medicines. Quote, please. And the rest of the quote is, and now this is where we buckle your seatbelts, okay? Yeah, what is she doing? Implicate. She implicates them. To implicate is to engage something in the activity for which it was made. Yeah, yeah, to apply, yeah. She's working over something with these medicamina. She's applying them somehow. To what? To two things. That's what the Quay does in Latin. It's beautiful. They're both this and that. I'll bring it up. Virgineo sinus. Right? On the one hand, it's her virgineo sinus that she's applying it to. And on the other hand, it's her monile itself. So the question is, what is she doing? The word virgineos is obviously from Virgo. And if I were to ask you now, I'll just lay down the definition for Virgo now. The definition for Virgo is a girl of marriageable age. Her virgin what? Her virgin sinus. Sinus. So if you can bring up sinus here, there we go. And you'll notice that it's essentially a curve, right? A little inlet of some sort, you know, a little place or a fold. And you'll notice a lot of comparisons to folds, right? We got togas, and then we get lap or bosom. lap or bosom. Right. This is the word kolpos. Go to kolpos for me. Yes, kolpos. Here, you've got it. Fantastic, you've got it. So notice what the first word is that we have it defined by is bosom or lap. Well, there's a lot of difference between bosom and lap, right? And I know bosoms, but what is this thing here? Well, cut to the chase, people. Anytime that you need to cut to the chase, go to Alice. Alice in Wonderland, she will always show you. Look, that's my shout out to the Oxfordians, right? Do I hear a hail Satan, Rob?
Oh yeah, you gotta have Satan.
Yeah.
Christian welcome.
Yeah. That's those Oxfordians. If we didn't have those guys, if we didn't have those dragons, we'd be nowhere. But if that page were back up here, and it's okay, it doesn't need to be. But if you go to number 2, you'll see idoion. Well, what kind of idoion? Idoion gunaikeon. This word is particularly the female genitalia. Okay, bring up the original Latin text, please. Yep, this one. Oh, beautiful. Excellent. So thank you very much. I appreciate that, Chewie. Monile. Look at monile. Yeah, what is a monile? And it's not just any monile, it's monile ipsum. Her very what? Her own monile. Now, if you look this up, which we can go ahead. We can show them the extended definition of monile. Yeah, look at this. Necklace or collar, right? Notice that it starts talking about jewels, but something that you might miss is that this is the Latin gemma, and I just want you to keep that in mind. And look here, we have the relationship to Greek, miainos or mionos, right? And those are from the word miaino, and our root for mania, right? So to be in a state of mania, maniakos, right? Anyway, so what she's doing, and that fits the text that this is from, because Medea does this with her body. She does this, and when she is done, it says she turns into a fury and runs off. She runs off, and she's ready for battle now. But she's putting this stuff on her. It's okay. That's okay. It's on her virgin sinus. A sinus is a sinus. It's an opening, right? A pocket, right? A pocket that you could have safe harbor in. It's the very word for harbor in kolpos. Kolpos means harbor, right? So we're halfway there.
All right, so you get that. Now, they are literally, it's just the fold of her clothing, and monile just means necklace. All right, it's up here. Monile is from manos, the necklace, and he picked up maniakion, and he sees the word mania, but it isn't. It is mani archeon, and it's still a necklace. All right, it's all it is. It's a necklace. But you heard him jumping from that to mania to going, everything else he said, and bringing all the cult ritual into it, because she'd put it in her sinus, which is her kolpos, which is her vagina. Can you see how he's jumped it all together? Just from this very, very innocent word, sinus. All right. This is.
So here we need to take the next step as philologists. See where it tries to derive the word, and it gives you the Sanskrit that's related to. And notice that for the Latin it says we get gemma, right? So wait a minute, monile and gemma. Where these things have to do with each other? Bring up gemma. There we go, gemma. Right. Look at the top here. From gemma, there's where your Greek is at its essential a swelling. Yeah, a swelling. And what is a swelling? In antiquity, a precious stone or a bud, right? Nice.
That's all it is, a precious stone.
But if you read on the top,
necklace,
and you just go ahead and you click on gemmo, and you keep tracing, you keep following the word back, you get that swelling is ultimately a pregnancy.
What a surprise.
Yeah. So when you reach inside the dragon's head, you pull out that stone. And this is for those of you with ears to hear. And I'm jumping ahead, Rob.
Yeah, those for the ears to hear are basically people like him that can put together connections that don't belong.
Yeah. The one who was being aston kolpon. Wait, in the kolpos? In the kolpos? Yes. Look at the parentheses these German scholars came up with in the early 1900s. Vox mystica. Oh, that was Dietrich's. I think that was Dietrich's. Yeah. That wasn't Kern's. Kern goes with the Vox Orphica, right? But it's the same thing. Into your kolpos. Can you feel it? Can you feel that being in your kolpos? They are not saying what you think they're saying. But for those of you who have very faithfully watched through all of this, you have those ears to hear.
you're hearing these things. So you know what that means, right? That dark harbor. Have you gone there? Have you been there to the dark harbor? Yeah. Yeah. Don't you want to go? Don't you want to go? People.
So you're getting the message? A lot of jumping together, which doesn't belong. And then we've got here, this is a mistake.
People, what are the, oh yeah. Now, I wanted you to see that development of throne. This is a nerd note for those of you who care, right? The throna with an omicron is technically referring to like herbs used in medicine, plants used in medicine, right? It's originally.
Yeah.
But this got conflated with the throna with an omega, right? That deeper, it got conflated with it. And so the throne and the drug very early on are the same. When you read in any of your Bible about somebody seated on a throne, now you know what that means. Congratulations.
Well, that's not true, because throna here is the plants, and it's always plural. And thronos, the masculine for throne or the seat,
Right.
doesn't have an omega. He said it had an omega. It isn't. It's just an omicron, and always is. Stephen's had a good look. He can't find any omega there, so he's mistaken there. And there is no equivalence. They were never conflated. That's in his imagination. He's imagined it. His apophenia at work again.
All right, hyperthronic. Now, people, you're going to say that means over the throne. What are visions? What are things that dance over the throne? Now, for those of you who've been through the initiation, you have seen and you know what thronos is. Are we screwed with the vox? Are we okay? Yeah, good. With the vox orphica. Do you know what that mystic language conveys the throne as? It conveys it as the drug. And if you look up, the Brits in 1850 understood that. Okay. So what is that vision which hovers above the throne, above the drugs?
Nope, they don't. So you're following how he's constructed this, and I think he's genuinely seen what he thinks are real connections. I don't think he's trying to deceive people here. It's what he honestly thinks he's seen, but it's not real. Anyway, we'll move on. So we'll go now into the burning purple. We've got a couple here. It's very.
When I tell you they're using purple and people mock, I'm like, oh, right? When people come forward and say, you can't think that what this guy is saying is true because nobody else believes that. Nobody else. I don't believe anything, people. I just read text and I'm telling you something. This is not a translation. Your Bible is a Greek original. And the cult that is behind it is a Christing cult meant to inflame the prophet wars and the control of the functioning mystery, the mystery that brings us justice.
All right. So he's jumped from purple to his whole mission.
Right.
All right.
People, I want to put that text up one more time. And I just want you to see some very, very important things. I've been telling you what they've been doing with the purple, how they prepare the purple, everything. And when we really want to jump into what the purple was being used for and how it was used, we run right up against the Christ. Right up against the Christ. Your past is a past of drug-using cults. Drug-using cults that were able to develop the technology, the auditory technology, the chemical technology to perfect a vessel to receive the quantum ambrosia that allows us to know ourselves, This is the gift of the Bronze Age echidnaic priesthood to humanity. It is a gift of healing. It is a gift of the baptism in blood.
Right, so you get the idea of that.
Right.
It's everything's wound in together with this burning purple. Does it exist? I think.
Right. I've searched so much for everything with the word purple in it. I know it's become a thing, you know.
Yeah. Anyway, the Colchicum autumnalis. It is beautiful. My parents had them in their garden, and
They are gorgeous.
Yeah, they just popped out of the Facebook notifications. Yeah, it's still going. I don't know
I have
what
a
else.
hard time pronouncing this word.
It's just
Colchicum.
Colchicum. Just put Colchicum. If it's Latin, it's Colchicum or
Colchicum.
English. So Colchicum autumnalis. Right. Now, I thought I'd got rid of all those bleeps, but I haven't. So they're going to carry on bleeping. Right. So we'll go back into it. The Colchicum autumnalis is a beautiful crocusy-like thing that pops up in the autumn. It's not from a crocus corm. It's not a crocia, which is a different variety. This is a colchis, right, which we will get to eventually. Other names are meadow saffron or ephemeron. These are all names. Now, you can hear they think it got the name ephemeron by the ancient Greeks as its toxicity could have caused death within a day. And there's nothing about the juice that is purple. It's milky. All right. So you've got a milky white juice. There's nothing purple in it. All right. Now I want to pop over here. And all right, I'll read this bit down here first. Here we are describing some of the quite horrendous effects that happen if you rub this or eat it or put it on your lips. This is what happens. You've got this, it's called the fire of Medea, the Colchian. Touching the lips of the one consuming it, unbearable itching breaks out all over, just as when snowy fig tree sap or harsh nettle stains the flesh, or when the bulb of the squill violently reddens the tender flesh. It's basically saying it's extremely irritating. Right. Would you like to put that in your vagina? Well, you haven't got one, but I certainly wouldn't want to.
There are ways.
Oh dear, oh dear. So, and this quotation carries on. It talks about violent retching and the stuff that you both ends come out, and it's quite a horrendous toxic drug. This autumn crocus. All right, so don't go eating that, and don't go rubbing it on you because it's extremely irritating. So we have the ephemeron, which is about the plant, and there's another word used for Medea's fire, and this is the naphtha, which is a light petroleum substance, and that will ignite when it's given daylight. All right, sunlight. Now, it's a fire, literally a fire, but the ephemeron is just like, it's a baneful fire. It's just basically, it's so toxic, it really itches. It's like you put something burnt on your
poison ivy of the lips.
Yeah, that's right. So you've got those two ways of burning. All right. So now listen to how he conflates it. Basically, conflates the two.
Focused on that plant that I showed you last time, the ephemeron, right? The colchicine, the meadow saffron. Remember I mentioned that last time? Well, watch this. Watch this. Oh, God. People, I'm just going to translate it to you, right? So he says the ephemeron is a schewastikon pharmakon. It is a compounded, designed drug. A designer drug? Yeah, a designer compound. That is what ephemeron is. Are you ready? And what does he say about it? He says the people who don't speak Greek, the Barbaroi, they call it naphtha, right? And what do we do with it? Hoi, chriomenoi, with which they Christ. Do you see the second line, people? And let's see, the word that's about 3/4 of the way into the line, right? Chriomenoi. Does everyone see Christ there? I wish I'd have put it in highlights. You mean you're Christing with Medea's burning purple? Absolutely. This is where it comes from. It's before. No, wait. No, she said it comes from that flower. I said, no, wait. Right, we got a little loop there. And she said it comes from that flower. No, I'm just kidding. Look at it, people. What does it say? What does it say? When this stuff, they take it and they Christ things, and the stuff that they Christ, when it enters the sunlight, bursts into flames and is entirely consumed. He says, look, it's for this, it's caustic, people, causticon, right? Listen to the scientific vocabulary developing. They've got this piece of cloth. Medea's got this piece of cloth. It's putting the stuff on it. It gets into sunlight. Boom!
Right. Did you see him doing that? He had a picture of the flower.
Mhm.
He started talking about ephemeron, but that text was nothing at all to do with ephemeron. It was only about the naphtha, about the petroleum jelly and whatever else was thrown in with it to make it ignite. All right, so that was him being very naughty. Yeah, and Chewie even thought he was talking about the flower, and he said, no, wait. Right, he knew what he was doing, and that's not at all being honest. All right, we'll move on. Help.
The naphtha.
What? I don't know what happened to that slide. Oh, there we go. No, it's not that one. Right.
What is Medea's name? Well, she's got a bunch, as the text tells us, right? She of many names. But one of her names is Colchis. Now, this is not Colchis. This isn't. This is Kochlos. Not Colchis, but Kochlos. You see what happens? We switched. We switched the consonant pair there, right? Oh, that's interesting. What happens when you call Medea Colchis? You mean she's the Colchian, right? She is Colchis. She is the place. She is the thing. If you check an Alice from Wonderland will tell you from 1850 that this word is the same. That it is merely a swap in consonants that is typical of Pelasgian magic. Pelasgian magic, those Chthonian people, predecessors of the Greeks, pre-recorded history, pre-written history. Yeah. And they do this all the time. I'm going to give you something new tonight. This is fun, but I'm going to give you something new. As the human language developed, it was driven forward by dyslexics. There is a dyslexia that is employed as a power in the magical papyri. You mean if you're dyslexic, that you have a draw that is part of the history of humanity that at one time was compelling our languages forward? Yes. Yes. They do it in the PGM. They'll flip consonants. And now you know why we have edim. The Etruscans will do it through that Pelasgian influence. It comes into the magic where we see the flipping of the consonants. Yes, love it. Edim is the Medea. That is the paradise, right? I didn't want to take you to a place. I wanted to bring a place to you. This is Edim. She is paradise. What is bring that word up one more time. Oh, sorry, Chewie. What is the Kochlos? What is the Kochlos? What is it, people? It's, surprise, surprise, the source of the purple. The source of that which puts us into the oestrus. That's what she is queen of. Yeah. Western civilization created by one woman, the mind. Yes.
Right. I'll play the next one and then we'll go through this. Sorry, I was saying Kochlos. No, this is the Kolkos. Can you see it's a capital K because it's a proper name. It's a man, the Kolchos, which is the Colchian or the Colchian, right? So a capital K is the Colchian and Kolchis is the feminine. So we've got Medea, capital K, Kolchis is the feminine, and it's nothing to do with Kolchos with a small k. This is different. Okay. We'll get to it in a minute.
Medea, the Medewa, you can call her Kolchis. That's what they call her. But what is, I've got to give me, you can go to that one, but give me the next one because these two are paired. Look at this. Kolchos. What is it really coming from? This little spiral creature that they take, the murex it's called, they take it. He's got a little secretion. I've seen it described as mucus. collect it and they have to process it, right? Okay, look, this is Kolchos's kochlos. It is that shell. This is the place where they're working the purple, and her name means purple. Her name means purple. This is a big deal. The first word out of the Library of Herculaneum was purple.
That's hilarious. You saw the earlier one. He says how they were flipping it all the time and it drove the language forward. Well,
Right.
when you see, Stephen pointed this out for me, the FL there is falso lectio. Falso lectio. It means, basically, it's a spelling mistake.
Gotcha.
It's a spelling. It was written as kolchos, but they meant to have written kochlos.
Right. Okay.
Okay. And was this in ancient texts driving the language forward? Nope. It's only found here in this one. Leontius couldn't spell. Maybe he's dyslexic.
Oh, totally. Absolutely.
Yeah, but he's looking back at a plural in a poem by Antipholus. This is in the plural form. So it was the kochloi that he wrote, meaning he put kolkoi instead of he put kolchoi instead of kochloi. All right. And that's the 1st century AD. And looking back again, he's seen a 6th century poem, 6th century AD by Leontius. Well, I don't know. Yeah, it doesn't say AD or BC, but I think it was AD because Stephen said it was a Byzantium text. All right.
Right. I think you're right.
Okay, so none of this misspelling was happening way back in history, driving the language forward.
Right.
He's just bullshitted this lot.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely bullshitted it.
Are you ready? Oh, people, I just wanted you to see, just in case you thought I was making it up, the Kolchos, the Kolchos and the Kochlos. My dyslexia hates this, right? Kolchos, I did it there again, and Kochlos. My dyslexia hates this. Are we in a loop? Kolchos and Kochlos. Are you ready? What do they both mean? Well, one of them is the name of the place, and the other one's the name of the murex. Give me the next one. The name of the murex. And they use them interchangeably. Oh, well, isn't that special? Do you know what they call one of these people walking around? They call him a kolchos. That's a Colchian. Next. And what do they call the kochlos? Well, that's the murex. And that's what we use for the dying, the baptism. The baptism. I'm about to show you something new, Christians, about your own language that you didn't even know. It's gorgeous. Give me the next one. Give me the next one. You know how long we can go? What do they call Medea? They called her Colchis. The first Christ. Isn't that awesome? They called her Colchis. She becomes that murex.
No, she doesn't. All right. And there's another place where he's misunderstanding the lexicon, and again he's pulling the purple into it. I'll just talk you through this one. He's brought this up on his show a couple of times actually beforehand. Now, businos literally means made of busus, which is flax, right? So it's basically saying linen. That's all it means, is linen, all right? And it can be put now as a syndon businos as a third word telemones, which isn't here, but if you go to the LSJ on Sindon, you'll see this entry, and it's S businos telemonis in the Sindon entry. You need the 3 words together to mean bandage. So you've got fine cloth, Sindon, businos, which is your linen, and your bandage is the telemones, which actually isn't on here. All right. So
there's a huge misconception with the Sindon comments.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've got 2 references only, both in Herodotus, one for bandage for mummy cloths and the other one for wounds. And you were looking at this recently, weren't you, on one of your shows? Okay. All right, forget those. Now down here, what does this HSCH mean? All right, it's from Hesychius's lexicon. And when you look at businon, All right. It's in Latin, de spurius ipsis quibus siglum hes prefix. In others, regarding the spurious ones themselves, to which I have prefixed the siglum hes, or HES. So in HES, you've got this one in Businon. In Revelation, alas, alas, for the great city that was clothed in fine linen, that's the Businon. In purple, purphuron, and scarlet, adorned with gold and jewels and with pearls, right? Now, for some reason, it got put in here, where actually here, it just means fine linen, it's there, but it was put in under purple. So that's a mistake, all right? And again, in Ezekiel, you got peribalaya, which is wraps, in busina, in fine linen, and of woven hair and embroidered. But for some reason, the busina, whether it was from here, but it was again put in under porphyros. But it's not. It's a mistake. So businos just means fine linen, and porphyros just means the color. You know, it is not equivalent. Businos does not mean purple, but Armen thinks it does.
Sometimes
Hang on, before we do that, a couple.
So
Line 6.
I'll stop.
Right. I was just going to add, sometimes I theorize that the purple they put on Jesus may have just been the Sindona that was jettisoned by the Neoniskos in the garden, but that's just my fun theory. Continue.
All right.
4. Parthenos. What are they? In Businos. Businos. Who are they? What is Businos? It's the finest of those linen strips that you impregnate with the purple. If you look it up in the LSJ, you'll find it, that it says this equals the porphyria, right? This is that dye-injected cloth. And what do? They're wearing it. And what do their faces look like? Did we just read this backwards from 666? Yeah, we did. They have faces of asps, of serpents. Bring up the pictures, Chewy. You have some pictures of that, right? Now, I want to talk about the art with Chewy a little bit here for a second, which we hardly ever do. But I want you to realize what this is, what she is, who she is. Right? And when I say what she is, I'm really talking about what she is. What speciation are we talking about? Right? This priestess, she has been raised within the rite. She is the virgin viper. What does that mean? Does that mean she has the head of an actual snake? Don't be stupid. These are Greeks, man. They would laugh at your stupid ass. Right? She has been under the influence of the communion from that developmental pre-pubertal stage. The drugs that they have been giving her have altered her. And they haven't altered her in a way that you have observed. What kind of species do we have here? We have a genetically enhanced. And when I say enhanced, what I mean is they have given drugs that have activated genes. They have given drugs that have affected tissue development hormonally. This is the viper, the echidna. And she is all over the place in our text, powerfully. Oh, God.
That's just total imagination. No text says that she had this viper-like demeanor or complexion or whatever.
Right.
All right. Where was she put on the regime as she was prepubertal? There's nothing. That's just his own imagination. I suppose he thinks he's putting the businos up her. All right.
He wants it to be.
Apophenia. This is curious. A linen cloth. A linen cloth. Look. In plural. It is the busina. What are the busina? Those are the purple, the burning purple, not the burnt purple, you morons. The burning purple. Go read Dioscorides, you morons, where he talks about which of the drugs are more caustic or more burning, right? And you'll see where the purple ranks. It's actually quite interesting, but you morons have a cousin who does some modern bullshit. And so you come up with idiocy, right? Guess what? Everybody saw the brothel for what it was. You're going to have to take your shit to a different plane.
Yeah, we know who the modern Greek person is, our hero, Stephen. Yeah. Now, that was Othonia. Now, when I've done my own research on it, Othonia is the only, it's a coarser cloth. All right. You've got Sindon is a fine cloth, more like a muslin and, finely woven veil type cloth. Othonia is your rough cloth. Interestingly, two of the Gospels have Jesus' corpse being wrapped in a great big sheet of sindon, and the other two have him being wrapped in a great big sheet of Aphonia. Yeah, it's just it's just cloth. And going in the medical authors, I looked up at Hippocrates, and he's got about 50 plus different texts where Aphonia is used as a wrap, and you've got to specify it is soaked in such and such juice to make it medicated, and then they apply it. There's a whole process to describe a medicated wrap or medicated bandage. And I've never found it with sindon. I've only found it with Aphonia.
Okay.
I've looked. I can't find sindon ever being used as a medicated wrap.
No. So the Galen that he always says, that's when he tries to cite that.
Yeah, he's never shown us a text. If it was there in the text, it would be showing it every. But there's no text.
Yeah, that's
there's no
true.
text. Absolutely no text.
So that would be a huge distinction with what they would have been doing to maybe persuade some of the theories a little bit in different direction for sure. So if it's this Sindun, there's nothing about that's alluding to an impregnation at all. And I honestly don't know why people want it to be a Ludwig von Krug version of that on the kid. I imagine he'd probably want to hold on to it if he was trying to medicate a fresh castration. And we're not obviously cracking that, but go ahead, continue.
Yeah. All right, and here we've got that last clip I showed before I started talking. It was he talked about how caustic they were and how Dioscorides was discussing the different causticnesses of them. All right.
And who is that? Who has the Colchian Gerun voice? And by the way, the Colchian voice is also the Cochlean voice.
No, it's not.
They switch. You see the lambda and the he in the first word of the second line? They will switch those. This to make the association between Colchis and the murex that was producing the purple itself. This is the voice, the Colchian voice of the burning purple.
No, it's not. I actually had those two around the wrong way, but it doesn't matter.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
No, it's great.
Now, this is one of Stephen's slides. He said I could use it. It's an expansion from the Dioscorides, okay? And this is the bit, porphyra caesa. That's burnt. Not burning, it's burnt. And it's purple shells when burnt. Has drying properties and serves as a dentifrice, which is a tooth powder. For cleaning teeth, it also reduces overgrown flesh, cleanses ulcers, and aids in healing. All right. Now, the next entry, he's still talking about the cura case here is shells, probably whelk shells, this one. Now, the same effects are produced by burnt whelk shells, which are more caustic than these. If the shells are filled with salt and burned again in a raw pot, blah, 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 plaster for burns, medicine. All right, the medicine must be allowed to form a crust. Once the burn heals, it will fall off naturally, okay? And lime can be made from these shells. You're taking the calcium carbonate out of them, all right?
Right.
So here we have burnt, not the purple dye, it's the burnt shells. So there's no burning purple anywhere. And he said, he was talking about the causticity of them. And yeah, for some reason, when you burn it, there's a caustic, it's not acidic, it's actually alkaline calcium carbonate. So anyway, you're drying off your skin that's, and it's good as a poultice, I suppose, to cover a burn and wait till it heals and then it falls off. So that's where we've got no burning purple. Okay, I think we've covered that. I want to put that to bed and move on now. I know time's ticked on.
I'm glad you did that because that is, I needed that.
Yeah, I thought it needed clarification, and to see his mind at work and to see where he's making mistakes, but believing his mistakes.
And
all right,
the whole theology out of it, practically.
Yeah, and then he can't backtrack because the other aspect of him is that he has to have his people believing in him, so he can't be ever wrong. He has to bullshit around to make sure that whatever he said first is still the truth, even though you've got lots of people pushing back at him.
It's the same thing with politics.
Absolutely.
They never admit defeat, only victory, no matter what.
Yeah.
There's always a mental gymnastics to.
Yeah, and that's just an insecurity. It's a paranoia. It's whatever you want to call it. It's not being a mature adult where you can humbly say, "Yeah, okay, guys."
It's a 7th grade.
Yeah,
Mean Girls. So we have I was extremely interested in. I heard you mention on a podcast one time a Semen communion, and so I've asked everyone on the show where this was. They brought up some stuff, but we kind of needed to iron out the theory a little bit. So tell us about that.
Okay, I've got a lot of information, which I hope I'll be able to get through fairly quickly. Now, there are definitely direct references in tractates and the heresiologies, which we'll look at first. All right. Now, normally when you look at the Pistis Sophia in the Nag Hammadi library, you don't see this text because this is from a different codex. All right. This is the Coptic manuscript in the British Library. It's not the one that's in the NHL. Okay. And here we go. Thomas said, "We've heard that there are some on the earth who take the male seed and the female monthly blood and make it into a lentil porridge and eat it." Okay. Jesus was wroth when he destroyed out of darkness, so they was really, really negative about these people doing this. Okay. Now this is possibly 3rd century. All right. It's difficult to know because once they've been translated from the Greek into Coptic, you've no idea how many more times it's been copied, and it's very hard to trace it back, but it possibly 3rd century. And you've got Ephraim the Syrian with hymns against heresies. This is at some point before 373 AD. Now that figure there is because of Epiphanius. All right, this is some proof that it was around and known and talked about before Epiphanius did his Plenarian, because people think he's made it. Oh, sorry, didn't mean to do that. I need to go back. Oops, sorry. Right, okay. So he mentions the Borborians because they were defiled. All right. Borboros means filth, muck, slime. Disgusting. All right. And as such, it's meant to be a slur word to describe the dirty people. They call themselves Fibionites or Strationtics or Codians, or there's lots of other names that they give themselves, but actually their real name, they call themselves the Gnostics. All right. They call themselves the Gnostics. Right, so the Borborians, they were defiled. And I'm going to look at the Plenarian in a minute, but notice one's hidden in the church. All right, now this is Epiphanius saying, "I lost no time reporting them to the bishops who were there and finding out which ones were hidden in the church. They were expelled from the city, about 80 persons, and the city was cleared of their tear-like thorny growth." So this was when he was in Egypt. It doesn't say where in Egypt, but he was in a city in Egypt, and he was approached by 2 of their women, given their books, and they were trying to convert him, to persuade him to go and join. But he read the books. He's doing this from first hand. It's not him making stuff up. I don't know whether to go to Panarian quite yet. I won't at the moment, but I'll jump back to that. Again, it's the Barbarians. Again, this word filthiness, an abyss of crimes against chastity, and the certain damnation of vices voluntarily carried out by humans will not be lessened by the sanction of the divine law. Basically, he's saying they're quite depraved, they're quite licentious. And then you've got, now we're back into the 5th century now, we moved on. For all the things as divine works by those men transcend every immoral conception and every abominable thought, and to speak the name is sufficient to hint at their all abominable. Sorry, I keep doing this.
Are you fine?
Yeah, all right, I'll go back. I'll start this. Theodoret, 5th century, for all the things done as divine works, they think it's a sacrament that they're doing. It's a divine work they're doing. That's what they think. But they transcend every immoral conception and every abominable thought. And to speak the name is sufficient to hint at their all abominable adventure. For the Borboriani were so called because of this. And it's filth, it's defilement, it's uncleanness.
Right.
Okay. Now the Theodosian Code, again mentioned there of the Borboritae. And the Ophitans, there's the Ophites. Okay, we'll go back to them. Now, I'm going to go back now to Panarian, but I'm going to have to go to a different tab because there's so much of it.
Okay.
Here we go. Share this tab instead. There we go. So I've gone through, I'm not going to read everything. Obviously, there's too much there. But it's been called Nicholas's sect. All right? So the Nicolaitans are identified as these Borborites. Okay. Now, the Nicolaitans, they have a foul, their supposed assembly, promiscuous fornication, and they eat and handle both human flesh and uncleanness. Now, that word akatharsia, I will come back to later. But as a side note, there's a theory that suggests that the name was not derived from a specific person named Nicholas, who's one of the deacons, apparently. Now, the Aramaic word nekola means let us eat. This is a proposed origin for the name of the Nicolaitan sect mentioned in the book of Revelation. They're condemned there for eating food offered to idols. But the Greek word is ambiguous, meaning literally idol offerings, eating idol offerings, which does not have to mean regular food. Both menses and semen in the law were unclean or impure, akathartos. Okay, so akatharsia here could very well be referring to the female and the male emissions. All right. Now, if a guest arrives, they have this special hand clasp, tickle the palm, and they know. And once they recognize each other from this, they start feasting right away. It's almost, let's eat. Okay, so this lends support to the theory, all right, of the name.
Right.
Okay. Now we're getting into some of what they were doing during their meetings. So a husband will move away from his wife and tell her, speaking to his own wife, get up and perform the agape with the brother. They had all their women in common. And when the wretched couple had made love, and I'm truly ashamed to mention the vile things they do, for as the Holy Apostle says, it is a shame even to speak of what goes on amongst them. Still, I should not be ashamed to say what they are not ashamed to do, to arouse horror by every means in those who hear what obscenities they're prepared to perform. For after having made love with the passion of fornication, in addition, to lift their blasphemy up to heaven, the woman and the man receive the man's emission on their own hands, and they stand with their eyes raised heavenward, but the filth on their hands, and pray, if you please. The ones they call stratiotics and Gnostics, and offer that stuff on their hands to the true Father of all, and say, "We offer thee this gift, the body of Christ." And then they eat it, partaking of their own dirt, and say, "This is the body of Christ, and this is the Pascha, because of which our bodies must suffer. Our bodies suffer and are compelled to acknowledge the passion of Christ." And so with the woman's mission, when she happens to be having her period, they likewise take the unclean menstrual blood they gather from her and eat it in common. And this, they say, is the blood of Christ. And so when they read, "I saw a tree bearing 12 manner of fruits every year, and he said unto me, this is the tree of life," in apocryphal writings, they interpret this allegorically of the menstrual flux. All right, so that's what they were doing. I think each group were doing it slightly differently. We had that lentil porridge, but the idea is that that has to be consumed as part of their religion.
Right.
Okay. Even though one of them should now this actually I found really, really distressing when I first read it. You know, I've had several miscarriages. Now, don't get teary now, but it's quite horrifying. I will do my best just to read it through. But even though one of them should accidentally implant the seed of his natural emission prematurely, and the woman becomes pregnant, listen to a more dreadful thing that such people will venture to do. They extract the fetus at the stage which is appropriate for their enterprise, take this aborted infant, cut it up in a trough with a pestle, and they mix honey, pepper, and certain other perfumes and spices with it to keep it from getting sick. And then all the revelers in this herd of swine and dogs assemble, and each eats a piece of the child with his fingers. And now, after this cannibalism, they pray to God and say, "We were not mocked by the Archon of lust, but have gathered the brothers' blunder up." And this, if you please, is their idea of the perfect Passover. And it reminds me a bit of, "Yet she will be saved through childbearing, if they continue in faith and love and holiness with self-control." That's really in the wrong place. There's later on, it talks about how you can't escape all the different archons in the levels of heavens if you have had a child. You can't do that. So their rationale was that whatever you eat, you are taking that thing's soul into yourself. So for them, they're saving their child from a misery on earth, trapped in a human body. They're taking the child's soul into themselves, and then they will take that child's soul with their own soul up to heaven. So that was the rationale they used to encourage this cannibalism. You know, it seems logical, right?
Sounds like Hotel California lyrics or something.
Yeah. So, and this is masturbation. They'll do it that way. And in 1 Tim 2:8, it's, "I want men everywhere to pray lifting up holy hands." They're not holy if they're covered in impurity with anger. You know, it's, again, there's a hint there in Timothy looking at these. They have lots of books. Now here we've got the Questions of Mary, and Armen's been through this before. In short, he takes Mary up to a high mountain, and then produces a woman from his side, starts having sex with her, stops, takes the emission, and then says to her, taking it aside, "Thus we must do that we may live." And when Mary was alarmed and fell to the ground, he raised her up and said, "O thou of little faith, wherefore didst thou doubt?" Now, this whole Questions of Mary is one of the books. Most sects do this. They will create a piece of writing in the name of somebody with authority to give their own teaching some clout.
Right.
All right. So all they've done is create this Questions of Mary and pretended that Jesus is saying this is what you must do, so that they can persuade their people. You know, Jesus says to do it. Yeah, that's all that was about. It definitely is not historical. Jesus never did it. Armen's quite off the tree off his trolley to even suggest that that's what Jesus did with Mary. Literally, he didn't. I won't go on there. All right. Now, the Fibionites offer their shameful sacrifices of fornication, which I've already mentioned here, in 365 names, which they've invented themselves as names of supposed archons, making fools of their female partners and saying, have sex with me so that I may offer you to the archon. And at each act of intercourse, they pronounce an outlandish name of one of one of their fictitious archons and pray, if you please, by saying, I offer this to thee, so-and-so, that you mayest offer it to so-and-so, another archon. But at another act, he supposes again that he is likewise offering it to another archon, so that he too may offer it to the other. And until he mounts, or rather sinks, through 365 falls of copulation, he calls on some name as such, and does the same sort of thing. Then he starts back down through the same acts, performing the same obscenities and making fools of his female victims. Now, when he reaches a mass as great as that of a total number of 730 falls, I mean the falls of unnatural unions, and the names they have made up, then finally a man of this sort has the hardihood to say, I am Christ, for I have descended from on high through the names of the 365 archons. Now, the 365 is a very significant number. Each archon is a ruler, and he rules his own heaven. And in the Aristotle and also the Pythagorean ideas of the universe, you've got these spheres with a planet going around the sphere. All right, so you've got the 7 planets. They could only see 7. They couldn't see the furthest. And Basilides here had a different view, that there were 365 of these heavens before you could get to the Pleroma, where the great God was. All right. And this is the Refutator in chapter 14. I'll just read it. For in these regions of the universe there exist, according to these heretics, creatures infinite in number, principalities and powers and rulers, okay, in regard of which there is extant among the Basilideans a very prolix and verbose treatise, where they allege that there are 365 heavens, and that the great archon of these is Abrasax, from the fact that his name comprises the computed number 365. You know how you can put the Greek letters, you can assign a number to them, and that happens to come to 365. So that, of course, the calculation of the title includes all existing things, and that for these reasons, the year consists of so many days. Now, the Refutator explains from their teaching that each successive named archon and his heaven have been birthed from the one before it. Therefore, there was a seemingly endless genealogy of named archons for them to perform their ritual to in the correct order. So instruct certain men not to teach false doctrines or devote themselves to myths and endless genealogies, which promote speculation rather than the stewardship of God's work, which is by faith. Oh, look, we're in Timothy again.
Yep.
Okay. So, in departing the world, the soul makes its way through these archons, but no one can get through them unless he is in full possession of this knowledge, or rather this contemptibility, and escapes the archons and authorities because he is filled. They do any number of things, and it is a misfortune to speak of their mad behavior. Some of them do not have to do with women, if you please, but pollute themselves with their own hands, and they eat it. They cite a slanderously interpreted text, these hands suffice not only for me, but also for them that were with me. And again, working with your hands that you may have to give also to them that need. And I believe that the Holy Spirit was moved to anger of these persons in the Apostle Jude. I mean, in the general epistle written by Jude. Jude is our brother. Jude is our Jude, the brother of Jesus, and called the Lord's brother. For the Holy Spirit taught with Jude's voice that they are debauched and debauched like cattle, as he says. Insofar as they know not, they are guilty of ignorance, and insofar as they know they are debauched, even as brute beasts. For they dispose of their corruption like dogs and pigs and other animals as well are polluted in this way and eat their body's discharge. All right. There's more in Jude about them as well. We'll go back to that later. For in fact, they really do defile the flesh while dreaming, despise dominion, and speak evil of dignities. But Michael the archangel, when contending with the devil, he disputed about the body of Moses, brought not a railing accusation, blah, 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 blah. Right. For they blaspheme the holiest of holy things bestowed on us with sanctification by turning them into borbros, into dirt. Now, in Nag Hammadi Codex 6, there are excerpts in the Coptic translated from Plato's Republic 9. Now, on this, it is called on the appetitive man, the man that's driven by his epithumia rather than his logisticon, by his logic and by his reason. Now, summarizing it, it proposes that it is justice for the unjust man to act unjustly, and right to feed the beast, the appetitive nature, and starve the man, the rational nature. Prior to this section, Plato makes the point that in fact there exists in every one of us a terrible, fierce, and lawless brood of desires, which it seems are revealed in our sleep. Okay? And by association with more sophisticated men teeming with the appetites we have just described, he is impelled towards every form of insolence and outrage and to the adoption of their way of life. He is drawn toward the utter lawlessness, which is called by his seducers complete freedom. Right, I was a bit quick there. I'll go back. Plato explains that when you're awake, you've got some regulation in your behavior and what you're thinking and how you speak. Yeah, we regulate ourselves, but when you're asleep, that's turned off and your imagination goes. Mm-hmm. And he says, in your dreaming, you can do a horrible murder. You could rape your mother. You could, you could do all these dreadful things in your sleep because there's no regulation. Right. You've lost that conscience. All right. This is the point he's making, which I'm sure is what the point is that Jude was making here. They defile the flesh while dreaming. Yeah. And they're having all their orgies and their cannibalism, etc. And it's like they're in a dream. They're not being sensible. I'll miss some out. That's about the other side of dreaming. It's that their minds are so shot that they're speaking such rubbish. All right, so I'll move on there. All right, they deceive the woman folk who put their trust in them, laden with sins and led away with diverse lusts. That's from 2 Timothy 3, 3-6. It's talking about where these men will sneak in to houses and deceive these women and carry them away, it actually says. And I'm sure it's literally they're stealing them.
Right.
Okay. And these are the slave girls who have been used to being raped all the time, and they go in and steal these slaves and use them in their cult. That's in 2 Tim 3. But in their circles, the more indecent a man is, the more praiseworthy they consider him. They say that virgins are women who have never gone to the point of being inseminated in the normal marital relations of the customary kind. They have sex all the time and commit fornication, but before the pleasure of their union is consummated, they push their villainous seducer away and take the dirt we spoke of for food. Comparable to Sheila's perversity with Tamar. They boast of virginity, but instead of virginity have adopted this technique of being seduced without accepting the union of seduction and the seminal discharge. All right, so they're called Parthenos. They're called virgins. All right, but they're not. The ones they call Levites do not have to do with women, but with each other. So here you have the highest grade are the homosexuals. All right. And these are supposedly distinguished and praiseworthy persons. And when they make fun of those who practice asceticism, chastity and celibacy as having taken the trouble for nothing. You know, they think they've achieved it.
Right.
Right. In the first place, the Apostle Paul grubs up the entire root of their wickedness with this injunction about younger widows. Younger widows refuse. After they have waxed wanton against Christ, they will marry, having damnation because they've cast off their first faith. But let them marry, bear children, guide the house. But if the apostle says to bear children, but they decline procreation, it is the enterprise of a serpent and a false doctrine, because they are mastered by the pleasure of fornication. They invent excuses for their uncleanness so that their licentiousness may appear to fulfill Paul's commandment. All right, now, I didn't really need to read the rest of that. But if you read the verse 13, which wasn't quoted by Epiphanius, but somebody else has pointed this out, and they could well actually have a point to make. In verse 13, at the same time they will also learn to be idle, going from house to house, and being not only idle, but also gossips and busybodies, discussing things they should not mention. So I advise the younger widows to marry, have children, and manage their households, denying the adversary occasion for slander, for some have already turned aside to follow Satan. Now, that reads perfectly well. But in the Greek, you've got this word here, manthanousin. It's the word you get mathetes from, which is your disciple. And manthuno, that's what it is. That is the verb that means to train, to learn by rote, to be discipled. All right. So why are you being discipled? To be idle. Idle can actually have another. It means unproductive. It means counterproductive.
Right.
It's the word used in every idle word a man shall give account for. There's something unsavory. There's something counterproductive about that idle word that you're going to be having to give account for. It's not just about being lazy. So are they being trained to be counterproductive? And they go about from house to house, and they're not only idle, or they're not only counterproductive, but they're also fluoroi, which means to bubble over. It's just blathering nonsense. Okay, they're idle prattlers. And periergoi. Now, the word can mean busybody, but periergos is also a worker of magic.
Okay.
All right. Now, periergar are the magic arts, and a periergos is a worker of magic. So that's something to keep an eye on. And speaking those things that you ought not to do. Deonta means it's like a compulsion. This is something you must do. Yeah, it's necessary. It's required. Deo. But it's not something that is required. So they're saying things as if they're required, but they're not. If you get what I'm saying. So you can actually read this whole verse here describing the women that have gone because of their lusting, basically the ones that have been stolen and snuffled away.
Right.
These young, and the young widows taken into the cult, doing all of this like they did with young Epiphanius, trying to seduce him.
Right.
But the point is they are giving occasion for slander, and if they have turned aside to follow Satan. Right. It's a satanic cult that they've gone into. Mm-hmm. So, you can read Timothy differently. All right. Anyway, he that's unmarried and the virgin careth for the things of the Lord, how he may please the Lord. And he says this to show his true chastity at the Holy Spirit's solemn bidding. But he then says of the lawfully married, marriage is honourable and the bed undefiled. But whoremongers and adulterers God will judge. Furthermore, he cries out against them in his letter to the Romans and exposes the obscenities of those who commit the misdeeds by saying, for even though women did change the natural use into that which is against nature, and of the males, men with men working with that which is unseemly. Moreover, in the epistle to Timothy, he says to them, in the last days, perilous times shall come, for men shall be lovers of pleasure, and again, forbidding to marry, having their consciences seared with an hot iron. For they forbid chaste wedlock and procreation, but are seared in their consciences, since they have sex and pollute themselves, and yet hinder procreation. All right, so again, he's alluding to 1 Timothy 4:3 there.
Right.
All right. Yeah, I think that's probably as much as I need to take out of the Pinarian. As you see, there's a lot more than just the greater questions of Mary, and you can see how it mixes in with the biblical as well. Yeah. Okay, right. I will stop sharing that one and go back to that one. Now we'll move on. I've looked at that one anyway. Sorry, I had to go back.
Sure.
No. Sorry, no, wait a minute. I can't remember. I did that one. Did I do that second book? Did I do this one earlier?
No.
No. All right, so I'll go back to this one then.
Cool.
Now we're on to the second book of Jude. There's no title to the second book, but in the manuscript, the first book is entitled The Book of the Great Logos, corresponding to mysteries. All right. And Jesus is supposedly said a load of things, and he then says, these mysteries which I shall give to you, guard them, and do not give them to any man except he's worthy of them. Blah, 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 blah. But above all, do not give them to those who serve the 8 powers of the great Archon, who are those who eat the menstrual blood and of their impurity and the semen of men, saying, we have known the knowledge of truth, and we pray to the true God. However, their God is wicked. All right. So again, you've got a Gnostic book that is against this type of licentious antinomian expression of Gnosticism. These will be ascetics, and they're dissing the licentious ones. And we've got some more. I say there's plenty of stuff around. For all the things done as divine works by these men transcend every immoral conception and every abominable thought. I've read this one, haven't I?
Yes.
Yeah. So I must have. I don't know how you're going to do that. Probably just forget this. Forget the bit about. All right, just forget that. I'll just move on.
Sure. No worries.
Okay.
It'll be good either way too, but I'll make sure it flows.
Okay. All right.
Here we go. Refutation of all heresies.
All right. Now the Paratai here are 3rd century.
All right.
They are one of the Ophite groups. Now
Okay.
the Ophites are the serpent worshippers.
Yep.
And I will just talk this through rather than have to explain it all. The Paratai have this idea that you've got the unseen spiritual God, the great power, who has the power, and you've got the material realm, and the two can't meet. But the serpent takes power from one and puts it into, basically puts it into the physical. It's the create, to some extent. It's doing the transfer, okay, right, between the Father, the light, and the material. All right, and they say that Jesus is this serpent taking from the Father and putting into the material, but also taking from the material and bringing back to the Father what could belong to the Father. All right, so this is their idea of the serpent moving backwards and forwards. All right, no one then, he says, can be saved or return into heaven without the Son, and the Son is the serpent. For as he brought down from above the paternal marks, so again he carries up from thence those marks roused from a dormant condition, and rendered paternal characteristics, substantial ones, from the unsubstantial being, transferring them here, from thence. Oh, I keep touching it. All right. Now, for proof of this, they adduce the anatomy of the brain, assimilating from the fact of its immobility the brain itself to be the father. They say that motion happens as a consequence of the immovable making it happen. So God is the originator. He's the one that sets into motion, which is why he's talking about it being immobile. So that's the father. And the cerebellum is the son, because of it being moved and being in the form of the head of a serpent. And they allege that this cerebellum, by an ineffable and inscrutable process, attracts through the pineal gland the spiritual and life-giving substance emanating from the vaulted chamber in which the brain is embedded, in other words, from the father. And on receiving this, the cerebellum in an ineffable manner imparts the ideas, just as the sun does to matter. Or in other words, the seeds and the genera of the things produced according to the flesh flow along the spinal marrow. Employing this exemplar, the heretics seem to adroitly introduce their secret mysteries, which are delivered in silence. Now, it would be impious for us to declare these, yet it's easy to form an idea of them by reason of the many statements that have been made. Now, to us English people, I didn't stop and explain it. If you read that, you think, oh, don't understand. But anybody in the Greek or Roman world of that time would immediately understand, because this was Aristotle's idea of human generation. He thought that the sperm was gathered into the brain, and at puberty, when the testicles enlarged and it hung down, it then made these tubules up the spine taut enough so they untangled, and that the sperm could then pass through. All right. This is his theory of why you don't have any ejaculation until you're mature. Okay. So
now I know. Oh.
Now you know. Okay. So when you see this, the seeds and the genera of the things produced according to the flesh, he's talking about sperm.
Right.
And they flow along the spinal marrow. It's coming down because it's now been stretched tight. Okay.
Right.
So, employing this exemplar, the heretics seem to adroitly introduce their secret mysteries. So, he's explaining here they are using sperm in their mysteries. And this is 3rd century Ophites. And you've got now the Ophite grouping in this Book of Heresies, chapter 5. They are supposedly before Simon and Menander.
Okay.
Okay, so you're looking at quite an ancient text. And now, when you read the Narsines, which is before, it is the sect before this Paratai in this chapter, it's obviously an older development, because there's quotations from the apostles, quotations from Jesus, etc., and all of the Gospels. So you're looking at least a 2nd century, so at least end of the 2nd century into 3rd century for the Narsines. All right, but their origination came beforehand, by the sounds of things.
Right.
And the other grouping in the other Ophite grouping is the Sethians.
Okay.
All right, we'll get on to those in a minute.
Right.
So here we have definitely in black and white, 3rd century, definitely got sperm being used in their mysteries. So allusions in tractates, heresiologists, apologists, and apostolic fathers. All right. So far we've seen definitely complete attestations that sperm is being used. Yes. Here, it's not quite so clear, but you can certainly see it. Right. Now, Nicolaus, again, we've got the Nicolaitans, was presented as speaking about the fetid and unclean permixio. Right, we're looking at Latin texts here, which originated in the lust of darkness for light. Now, Tertullian's a Latin writer, okay, and that's in his Omnis. Against All Heresies, Book 1. In Sethian theology, as recorded by Hippolytus, which used the paraphrase of Seth, which is also known as Shem, and that's found in the Nag Hammadi Codex 7, Codex 7, Book 1. Many explicit sexual references in this book. It talks about the unclean penis and the rubbing and the it's very the demon sex, and it's all over the book.
Right.
And for them, the unclean penis is the one that actually creates matter, and their whole thing is. Womb is nature, and that is what's producing matter, and their whole system, and you see this right at the beginning of the Panarian, they are trying to destroy the works of the womb. All right, so we've got this whole idea of not allowing procreation. You don't want to trap souls in matter if you can possibly help it. This is how you destroy the works of the womb. You don't cooperate. Okay.
I get this. Yeah.
All right. So in Elenkos, Book 5 or Volume 5, Chapter 19, 11 to 12, where a series of conjunctions, the syndromai, are reported to have taken place between heaven and earth, which are described like a womb. The animals in their multitude are said to be created out of a succession of such conjunctions. So I'm going to just pop over here about reported to have taken place between heaven and earth. The Ophites, I can easily get them mixed up. There's Ophite and there's Orphic. Now, the Orphics gave rise to the Bacchanalian worship.
Right.
And you've got basically the Bacchanalian is the wild side, and the Orphic is the more ascetic, restrained side. So you've got the two sides here, but they're both worshipping the same god. All right. Now
Right.
these two different expressions we're going to come across again. Now I'm going to stop sharing here and go to another. Okay, that's the one. All right, I'll share that one. Okay. Now, here in Bulgaria, you've got the Rodolphi Mountains, which are very sacred to Orpheus and the Thracian people. And this is a step pyramid. And it's actually a sun temple. See the hole here?
Yeah.
There, all right. And there's a platform here, which you'll see there. We're looking through the hole. At a certain time of year, the sun, as it rises, goes through that hole there. Maybe they had an offering here. Maybe they had smoke going up, and you could see the shaft of light coming through. I don't know what they did,
Right.
but sun temples are all over the place. Out of interest, this is a sacred wine press. Can you see the hole? Press here.
Yeah.
All right. Another wine press, another wine press. Now here, what does that look like?
Right.
Yeah. This is at the base of that pyramid. Okay. Now, there are more, these are called womb caves. There are more womb caves around now. This is from the inside of another womb cave.
Interesting.
Yes.
It reminds me of that episode of Everybody Loves Raymond when his mom got that big sculpture and it looked so much like female anatomy, and the dad was like, I love it.
All right. But this particular one is to do with their autumn and their spring cycle in agriculture. But at a certain point, see, inside this cave, I don't have to go out again and come back in to share it, but there's a picture of this one from the other side, and when it's lit up, you can see it looks like a womb. It is beautifully shaped, and there's an altar up in the depth of it.
Oh, cool.
And when the sun is in the right position, the tip of the penis here lights up on the altar. All right, and it's supposed to be fertilizing the earth, ready for the harvest. Okay, so that's, it's a beautiful symbolism. All right, I'll stop sharing that one.
That is great. I'm gonna make sure my mom sees that portion
Yeah.
for sure.
Okay. All right. But the other picture's beautiful, actually, but I won't look for it now. Okay, I want to go back to where I was. Share screen. Right, sharing again. So, having gone over to the Abum, we'll move on. The testimony of truth is a rather fragmentary remains of a codex in the Nag Hammadi library. And they're talking about various sects at the moment. They do not agree with each other. For the Simonians take wives and beget children. But the, sorry.
No, you're good.
Right. In the testimony of truth, they do not agree with each other. For the Simonians take wives and beget children. But the, can't see who they are, abstain from their nature, a passion, the drops of, and anoint them. It's a very, very fragmentary text, but you can imagine actually what it's talking about. I don't think there's much else that you can, so it's not definitely there, but
could be. I like that.
All right. So in Ignatius in Smyrna, I'll talk about this a bit more in the moment. Now, although Ignatius apparently was writing at the beginning of the 2nd century, my friend Jack Bull has done his thesis on the letters of Ignatius, and there is a collection of only 3 shorter letters by Ignatius, and they are the Ephesians, to the Romans, and the one to Polycarp. Those are the 3 short letters that exist in another collection. And he's done all the textual analysis to see that the 7-letter collection that most people think are original to Ignatius.
Right.
4 of those are complete fabrications, and the other 3, which are in the short collection, have been vastly added into various agendas. All right. So this one is probably quite mid to late 2nd century, not right at the beginning. And mid to late 2nd century is when an awful lot of other things were happening, and I'll talk about that soon. But although this seems like it's supposed to be a 1st century, early, turn of the century, it isn't. This is mid to late 2nd century. They abstain from the Eucharist and from prayer because they confess not the Eucharist to be the flesh of our Saviour Jesus Christ, which suffered for our sins, which the Father of his goodness raised up again. Now, if you've got your own Eucharist going on somewhere else with your own version of the blood and body of Christ, you aren't going to join in with the churches, are you?
Right, no.
All right. Now, in the long recension, all right, Ignatius's letters weren't just left at the 7. Somebody else later expanded it to 14 books and stretched out and added to the 7 that were there anyway, and it's made it into what's called the long recension.
Gotcha.
And in the Trallians, his letter to the Trallians, it says, "Do you also avoid those wicked offshoots of his, Simon, his first son and firstborn son, and Menander and Basilides, and all his wicked mob of followers, the worshippers of a man whom also the prophet Jeremiah pronounced accursed. Flee also the impure Nicolaitans, or like Nicolaitanes, falsely so called, who are lovers of pleasure and given to calumnious speeches." Can you notice this person knew that they'd been misnamed as followers of Nicolaus, He understood they weren't, and they were impure. All right.
Right.
So it's all there. All right. Now, Ignatius the Philadelphians. Now, if you remember, Philadelphia is one of the, in the letters to the churches in Revelation, Philadelphia is one where they've got the fornication and the immorality and basically the Nicolaitan type stuff. You've got it in Ephesians, supposedly, and you've got it in Philadelphians. All right. And here he says, take ye heed then to have but one Eucharist. He was obviously aware there was another one going on. So that's in Ignatius of the Philadelphians. And in Polycarp's letter to the Philippians, now Polycarp was writing probably about 160, mid-60s. He died in 167. So you're looking at probably mid-60s. They think it was towards the end of his life when he wrote this one. Okay. So whosoever shall pervert the oracles of the Lord to his own lusts and say that there is neither resurrection nor judgment, that man is the firstborn of Satan. All right. So here you're looking at, we can put the timing on this one, just after the middle of the 2nd century.
Yeah.
And you've got Clement Stramata 3. Now, that is, in his Stramata 3, he goes into a lot of the more licentious sects. All right. And this one he's just called These Three Wretched Men. These thrice wretched men treat carnal and sexual intercourse as a sacred religious mystery and think that it will bring them to the kingdom of God. All right. Now, this idea of coming to the kingdom of God, we will find in the biblical texts, in the Pauline letters.
Right.
Those lists of sins will not enter the kingdom of God. And guess what those lists of sins all relate to? It's their practices. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, in the Gnostic texts, we see value reversal. The spiritual class are the sodomites. All right. And the Apocalypse of Adam, they actually have angels rescuing the sodomites before the fire fell. And they took the sodomites for however many days to a secret place and preserved them. All right. And the Barbarites or the Fibionites or the Cainites, these are all actually attested of using them, the Apocalypse of Adam. So they justify their same-sex adultery, well, whatever, with each other. Well, right, Gospel of the Egyptians is used by the Narcenes and the Sethians, and these are all the same grouping. You're looking at, basically you're looking at the Ophite groups here. Right. The paraphrase of Shem is used by the Sethians. The Great Power is used by the Gospel of Judas is used by the Cainites. Now I put it in inverted commas. I'll talk about Cainites in a minute. And the Sodomites are in the Great Power and Origin of the World. They're two more of the codices in the Nag Hammadi. Now, positive figures, sorry, I keep doing this. The positive figures, Cain, the Peritai are the Cainites. Mm-hmm. They see Cain as positive, and all these basically rebels towards Yahweh. They're the heroes of the Sethians, the Ophites, the Stratiotics, and they're a subgroup of the Barbarites. So again, it's this same group of people. And Abel is seen negatively by groups or the texts in the Peritai. Again, these Cainites, the Sethians, the Archontics, and also the text Origin of the World and the Apocalypse of John, Abel is seen negatively. And in the flood, these people are saying that the flood came and the flood came the flood was given by Yahweh in order to destroy the spiritual people, but they got rescued. All right. So these are the Fibionites, again, the Ophites, they see that the flood wasn't getting rid of the wicked. The flood was an attempt to get rid of those who belong to the spiritual God above the demiurge. And that comes up in the hypostasis of the archons, the apocalypse of Adam, the great power, the gospel of the Egyptians, and the paraphrase of Shem and Seth. All right, so you've got the reversal of the flood here. Right, now, this is where I'm going to talk more about the Cainites, and trying to distinguish, probably aren't a sect by themselves, but it's a misnomer by the heresiologists thinking they were a sect, whereas in fact it's a class of people, but we'll get up onto that. Right, so Irenaeus, in his Against Heresies, 3 kinds of substances they declare of all that is material, which they also describe as being on the left hand, that it must of necessity perish, inasmuch as it is incapable of receiving any afflatus of incorruption. All right, interesting phrase there. As to every animal existence, I don't want to read all of it, but spiritual substance, again, they describe as having been sent forth to this end, that being here united with that which is animal, it might assume shape, the 2 elements being simultaneously subjected to the same discipline. They further hold that the consummation of all things will take place when all that is spiritual has been formed and perfected by gnosis. Now, by this they mean spiritual men who have attained to the perfect knowledge of God and been initiated into these mysteries by Achamoth. Achamoth is the Aramaic word for wisdom, Sophia. It's the same goddess. And they represent themselves to be these persons, the spiritual persons. All right. Animal men, animal is soul. All right. You've got the pneumatikos is spiritual, psychikos is animal, and hulikos is the material. Okay, so you've got the animal men, soulish men. They have to be established by their works and by mere faith. They don't have perfect knowledge, but we of the church, and as well as the Christians, are meant to be these animal men. Wherefore, also they maintain that good works are necessary to us, for that otherwise it's impossible for we should be saved. There was a different method of salvation for the different classes of people. Okay. They hold that they shall be entirely and undoubtedly saved, not by means of, but they themselves, the spiritual class that are instructing them, they say that they will entirely and undoubtedly be saved, not by means of conduct, but because they are spiritual by nature. Okay, for just as impossible that material substance should partake of salvation, because material substance corrupts. Yeah, that's entropy for you, all right? So it's impossible that it should partake of salvation, since indeed they maintain that it's incapable of receiving it. So again, it is impossible that spiritual substance, by which they mean themselves, should ever come under the power of corruption, whatever the sort of actions in which they indulged. For even as gold, when submersed in filth, loses not on that account its beauty, but retains its own native qualities, the filth having no power to injure the gold, so they affirm that they cannot in any measure suffer hurt or lose their spiritual substance, whatever the material actions in which they may be involved. Whoopee. Everything is permissible to me.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, sorry.
Okay.
Wrong one. That's the one. Wherefore, I don't want to read everything, but they maintain that carnal things should be allowed to the carnal nature, while spiritual things are provided for the spiritual. All right. And I've read that in the in Plato's Republic. I skipped over it really. It just said basically it is justice for the unjust man to act unjustly. In other words, he's acting according to his nature, and therefore it is justice. It's balance. It's correct. All right. That's what Plato means by justice. It's in harmony with its nature. All right. And then I also read on further down that you're supposed to feed the beast, and starve the man. All right. So in other words, you're allowed to feed the carnal nature. And also you're meant to feed the spiritual nature, which you do with the semen. All right. And I'll show you. Yeah, I've moved around the lane. So, committing many other abominations and impieties, they run us down, who from the fear of God guard against sinning, even in thought or word, and utterly contemptible, ignorant persons, while they highly exalt themselves and claim to be perfect and the elect seed. For they declare that we simply receive grace for use, wherefore also it will again be taken away from us, but that they themselves have grace as their own special possession, which has descended from above by means of an unspeakable and indescribable conjunction. Here's that word again, conjunction. And it's from above. You're looking at this. He's talking about receiving the, with the snake moving, you're getting the power from the God. And because you are compatible with it, you can receive it. All right. And in every way, it's always necessary for them to practice this mystery of conjunction. And they emphasize it by saying, whosoever being in this world does not so love a woman as to obtain possession of her is not of the truth. Okay, so in other words, you have to take possession of a woman, and they mean this in the way of the way they have intercourse. So you have to do that. And you wouldn't attain to the truth unless you do this. But whosoever being in this world has intercourse with woman, in other words, they do the full insemination, shall not attain to truth, because he has so acted under the power of concupiscence. In other words, he couldn't control himself. And he let it go. Right? So it's not talking about abstinence as the way.
Right.
Yeah. This is not abstinence.
No.
This is doing it, but having self-control to pull out in time.
Right.
This is doing it, but not having the self-control. And you are doing normal, natural intercourse, and that's not the way to be saved. All right. So they tell us necessary for us, whom they call animal men, and describe as being of the world, to practice continence and good works, that by this means we may attain at length to the intermediate habitation. They don't get the full salvation, but they get a measure of salvation. But that to them who are called the spiritual and perfect, such a course of conduct is not at all necessary, for it is not conduct of any kind which leads into the pleroma, but the seed sent forth from thence in a feeble, immature state, and here brought to perfection. All right? So that's their system. And then finally you have, they conceive then of three kinds of men: spiritual, material, and animal, represented by Cain, the spiritual, Abel, the material, and Seth, the animal. So the people of the church are meant to be the Sethians. Now, this is very confusing because I've been talking about the Sethians as Ophites and doing the sects. It's one of these confusions between Irenaeus talking about them and Hippolytus talking about them. But in the Cainite version that Irenaeus is talking about, the Sethians are the people of the church, who are the soul ones and not the spiritual ones. And they have to do the good works. So these three natures are no longer found in one person, but constitute various kinds of men. The material goes, as a matter of course, into corruption. The animal, if it makes the choice for the better part, finds repose in the intermediate place. But if for the worse, it too shall pass into destruction. But they assert that the spiritual principles which have been sown by Achamoth, being disciplined and nourished here from that time until now in righteous souls, because when given forth by her they were yet but weak, at last attaining to perfection, shall be given as brides to the angels of the Saviour. I don't need to go any further really, but at this point, I think my next slide is, discerning the different types of men. Right. So you've got these three different types. In the tripartite tractate, sorry, make a note of that, please. Right. In the tripartite tractate, it talks about when they arrive, they set about trying to find out which sort of man they are, and then they will divide them into different groups. Right? In Corinthians, it's talking about divisions all the time. Okay, keep that in mind. But in order to discern them, they have their own system. You have apparently expressly declared that there are 3 gods, 3 logi, and 3 minds, and 3 men. For to each portion of the world, after the division has been made, they assign both gods and logoi and minds and men. All right, so this is about the peritai. Mankind came to be in 3 essential types: the spiritual, the psychic, and the material, conforming to the triple arrangement of the logos, from which were brought forth the material ones, and the psychic ones, and the spiritual ones. Each of these 3 essential types is known by its fruit. They were not known at first, but only at the coming of the Saviour, who shone upon the saints and revealed what each was. Now the spiritual race, being like light from light, and like spirit from spirit, when its head appeared, it ran towards him immediately. It immediately became a body of its head. So you're looking at like substances, all right? Yeah, spiritual with spiritual people will be attracted to the spiritual Saviour. It suddenly revealed knowledge in the revelation. Now the psychic race is like light from a fire, is a weaker light, since it hesitated in answering knowledge. So these are, when they come and start announcing their gospel, these are the Christians who were sort of curious, but they aren't wholehearted about it, and they need more instruction. Yeah. Even more, they hesitated even more to run towards him in faith. Rather, through a voice, it was instructed, and thus was sufficient, since it is not far from the hope according to the promise, since it received, so to speak, as a pledge, the assurance of the things which were to be. Okay, so they would come, they would announce their type of gospel. Some people were immediately attached to it, others were a bit hesitant, and others who were well established in the Christian faith immediately rejected it. All right, and they were called the material race. However, is alien in every way, since it is dark. It shuns the shining of the light because its appearance destroys it. And since it has not received its unity, it is something reviled and hateful toward the Lord at his revelation. The spiritual race will receive complete salvation in every way. The material will receive destruction in every way, just as one who resists him. But the psychic race, since it is in the middle, when it is brought forth and when it is established, is double in its determination, both either for good if it turns towards the spiritual, as they call it, or for evil if it turns towards the material. And that's in the tripartite tractate. So, just as a single savor results from the mixture of many incense offerings in the fire, and just as an adept, by having a test in an acute sense of smell, ought to be able to, from the single odor of the incense, to distinguish accurately each ingredient of the incense offerings that have been mingled in the fire, whether, for example, storax or myrrh and frankincense or whatever other ingredient may be mixed in the incense. No one is aware of this place save we alone that have been born again, spiritual, not carnal, whose citizenship is in heaven above, in this manner insinuating themselves. They corrupt their pupils, partly by misusing the words spoken by themselves, while they wickedly pervert to serve any purpose they wish what has been admirably said in Scripture, and partly by concealing their nefarious conduct. They do it in secret. It's in Ephesians. It's shameful to even speak of what these people do in secret. That's there in Ephesians 5. by means of whatever comparisons they please. All these things, then, he says, that have been commingled, possess, as have been declared, their own particular place, and hurry towards their own peculiar substances. As iron towards the magnet, that's a strong attraction, very fast, very quick. And the chaff to the vicinity of amber, and that's weaker, so that's your material people. And the gold to the spur of the sea falcon, and that basically nothing belongs. That's basically saying that's your material race. So this is how they did it. The people that were really attracted were quite happy to have no conscience about rushing in and doing all the sex and everything else that they did, which was not just having sex. It was, I won't have to talk about that now. So, next one. We will go into the way of Cain. Now, this is, they're designated the Cainites because they are lawless as well. They're not just having sex, but they have no fear of doing anything wrong. And you read that, I read that earlier. So when Irenaeus describes the Cainites, they involved an angel, calling it a power, during their acts of obscenity. They also hold, like Harpocrates, that men cannot be saved until they have gone through all kinds of experience. All right, now I'll just stop there and talk about this. Their rationale was, unless you have gone through an act that is forbidden enough times for it to become indifferent to you, you haven't overcome it. And you see, it's not a victory by holding yourself back and not doing it.
Right.
You've actually got to do it, and do it so much that it has lost its power over you. You're indifferent to it. That was the argument. All right. To do every kind of unlawful thing. And Harpocrates sent a lady Marcellina ahead of him to Rome to do the teaching. And it was because they also believe in reincarnation. And the idea was that if you're doing okay this time, in this life, it's because previous time you've done enough wrong things to be indifferent and not attracted by those wrong things now, because they've lost their power over you. You don't want to do them, so you're a better person. But you've got to carry on doing some wrong things this time, and then next life round you'll be an even better person. So that was their crazy way of arguing it. All right, so an angel attends them in every and abominable actions and urges them to venture on audacity and incur pollution. Again, we've got the filth, the pollution. Whatever may be the nature of the action, they declare that they do it in the name of the angel, saying, "Oh, you angel, I use your work. Oh, you power, I accomplish your operation." And they maintain that this is perfect knowledge, without shrinking to rush into such actions as it is not lawful even to name. Now, in the Aramaic Targums, these are the set weekly readings in the synagogue, because your average run-of-the-mill Jew doesn't know how to understand Hebrew.
Right.
Armen's right. Hebrew had become just basically a ritual language. It was only the highly educated understood and read the Hebrew. The ordinary Joe spoke Aramaic, and that's what their life was in. So they made Targums, taking the Hebrew scriptures, putting them into Aramaic. But the one that was Targum Neophiti also had a commentary expanding on it. All right, so it's exposition of Gen 4:8, which is basically Cain and Abel went into the field and Cain slew him. They've put in this extra commentary. Cain spoke to Abel, his brother, "Brother, come, let us both go out to the field." And when they had both gone out to the field, Cain answered and said to Abel, "I know that the world was not created by love, that is not governed according to the fruit of good deeds, and that there is favor in judgment. Therefore," basically he knows that there is not favor in judgment, "therefore your offering was accepted from you with delight. Abel answered and said to Cain, I see that the world was created by love and is governed according to the fruit of good deeds. Because my deeds were better than yours, my offering was accepted from me with delight, but your offering was not accepted from you with delight. Cain answered and said to Abel, there is no judgment, there is no judge, there is no other world. There is no gift of good reward for the just and no punishment for the wicked. All right, I've highlighted that because that phrase comes up later in quite a few of the other sects. Done it again. Right, and Dr. Dylan Burns suggests that the later heresiologists mistakenly called the Cainites a separate sect. However, the general descriptions given about them align with the practices of the spiritual class of the libertine Gnostics of several sects. I've already shown that.
Right.
All right, I don't think I need to say anything else on that one. Now, you've got, jumping now into the 2nd century, we're looking at some of the apologists. Athenagoras, I can't remember this is before Marcus Aurelius and Commodus. This is his plea before those two emperors. All right, and at the time, the Christians were getting accused of atheism, Thyestian feasts, and Oedipian intercourse. Thyestian feast is cannibalism, and Oedipian intercourse is incest. All right. And Athenagoras is saying they've made up stories against us about these impious feasts and forbidden intercourse between the sexes, both that they appear to themselves to have rational grounds of hatred, but because they think either by fear to lead us away from our way of life, or to render the rulers harsh and inexorable by the magnitude of the charges they bring. I've already talked too much. I won't go on too much here, but they revile us for the very things which they are conscious of themselves. In other words, Athenagoras knows that they are doing these things, and they are accusing the emperor of the Christians doing it, so that they will then get killed. Now, don't forget, these are the Christians who've rejected their gospel. Therefore, they're the material, and the material ones are only deserving of destruction.
Right.
So let's destroy them. So that's what's happened there. All right, so yeah, these adulterous pederasts defame the eunuchs and the once married. All right, it is reasonable to suppose that those who think that they shall have no account to give of the present life ill or well spent, and that there is no resurrection. So again, you've got this phrase from the Cainites, but calculate on the soul perishing with the body, and being, as it were, quenched in it, will refrain from no deed of daring. All right, so you've got Athenagoras recognizing this same ethos from the Cain Targum, and he's calling these people the Cain, those who've gone the way of Cain, all right, who've gone Abel. So this denial of resurrection and judgment is also a tenet of the way of death described in the Didache. I won't read it now, but it comes up, that phrase, very often. Right, now we're going to scripture. And here we've got akatharsia, which is uncleanness.
Okay.
And that's very indicative of the semen and the menses. And it comes up in Romans 1:24. This is where it's talking about the rebels who have gone against God, and it's talking about the changing natural for the unnatural intercourse, etc. And the uncleanness comes in here. And you've got it in Romans 6:19, where that is, the body is not made for uncleanness. All right, and 1 Thessalonians 2:3, I can't remember particularly what that was, but you've got these mentions here. Now, I'll pop over here rather than go down those. Now, aselgeia is depravity, it's debauchery, it's outrageous behavior, it's, total, I don't care, do anything goes. And that comes up in Romans 13, 1-4-3. These in 2 Peter, these are against the heretics, likewise in Jude. They are very, very connected, these two tractates, or these two books here. Right, in Ephesians, you've got both the porneia, which is illicit sex. It's not your marital sex. So you've got uncleanness with porneia paired in Ephesians. You've got uncleanness and, you've got porneia and the depravity linked here in Ephesians 4:19. And you've got all three of them in 2 Corinthians 12:21, which says, when I come again, don't humble me in that you haven't repented from these 1, 2, 3 things that you're doing. All right. You can look these up yourself, but basically here you've got the list of the sins of the flesh, and you've got all three of them coming up there. And included in there, you've got your sorcery, and you've got creating divisions. These are characteristic. And he says people doing these things will not inherit the kingdom. So here you are pushing against a teaching that you've got to do all these things in order to inherit the kingdom. That is the teaching.
Right.
And you've got the pushback saying those that are teaching these things will not inherit the kingdom. All right. And this not inheriting the kingdom phrase comes up in Romans 6:19. Yeah. Which is the one that people use against homosexuality. You'd say, those who are catamites, those who are sodomites, they will not inherit the kingdom. It doesn't say homosexuals will go to hell. It's just saying that it's saying that the teaching that you've got to do this will not lead you to the kingdom, as they are claiming.
Gotcha. That's just not it.
Yeah, that's not it. Oh, sorry, I don't know why it's jumping like this all the time. There, back again. I just shouldn't touch my cursor. All right, and then the porneia, the illicit sex. Notice the pluses there. These are the only few where it is genuinely Paul saying, I hear that there's a man with his mother or man with his father's wife. And here it's basically saying flee fornication. And it's talking about going to the temple prostitutes. All right. And 1 Thess 4:3 was your sanctification. And basically, don't indulge in fornication, adultery, etc. So those 4 are genuine references. I call them genuine because where I've got here, where the negatives are, all of these, I can't tell with these because these are 2nd century texts anyway, mid to late 2nd century texts anyway, that's obvious. This is where my other very big interest in the new studies coming out using the New Testament that Marcion published. He didn't write it. He says he received it, and he then just put together 10 letters of Paul and 1 gospel, which was like a small version of Luke. All right. He then says this is the original, and that the church added to it. And the church is saying, no, we've got the original. Marcion cut stuff out, which is true. And this is where some fascinating work is going on right now. In the Patristica channel on YouTube, and there's a Discord Patristica. And I'm in there, I'm good friends with Jack, who did his thesis on Ignatius. In fact, I copy edited his thesis ready for his book. So, you know, I know his thesis very well. And they are using data mining, really, a computer-aided analysis of it's almost like the style of writing. It's not that it's looking for the big words, it's looking for those little incidental words you use in ordinary speech. And they have shown with absolutely no doubt whatsoever that what was originally true is what is in Marcion's version. And what has been added is all this moralistic stuff here.
Okay.
All of this has been added, and it was added mid-50s, 50s to 60s. They can pinpoint it there roughly. So all of the things that the negatives, these are all mid to late 2nd century additions at the time when these Gnostic groups are flourishing, when they're doing this teaching, when they're doing these practices, where they are inside the church, infiltrating them. And a lot of these letters here in Thessalonians, Peter, they're basically saying, look, recognize these people and keep aloof from them. And the bit in 1 Corinthians 5, it says, don't eat with them, because they're just mingling around, but they're doing their own thing in secret. They're doing their own, they're having their own Eucharist in secret. They're doing their own agapes in secret. All right. So, you know, it was a means of alerting the churches, look, there are these people here, keep away from these. All right. There wasn't any, the church wasn't in power. It wasn't being patronized by the state. It had no power to persecute them. So all they could do was avoid them. Don't talk with them. Don't eat with them. Just keep them away. All right. They had, you know, they could not say you're not allowed, because these, these churches are not buildings with a membership list.
No, they're
deacons on the door. No, they are households.
Mm-hmm.
And you could have a household that was perverted and subverted because a Gnostic preacher had been elected to be its leader. And that became a whole household of these people. And it's only occasionally they would get together for a large symposium meal with a feast with the rest of the church.
Don't we see this in some of those early houses on the front doors?
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't this an original Christian logo for those small houses that you're talking about?
I can't see you, sorry.
I'm sorry.
All right, I'll jump out. What are you saying? Oh, right.
This logo here, I've seen tattooed on guys, and I've found it on a few small houses that they theorized were meeting places for early Christians. I don't know if you'd seen that or not, but it looks like a little house, like what you're speaking of anyway. So I thought kind of interesting.
Well, that symbol is what is over the threshold of the Talpiot tomb.
Okay.
I haven't seen it anywhere else. That's the symbol which can also, somebody else who's done a lot of work on numismatics, and he's got his own theory of all these symbols. And he says that could be the sign of Jonah. You're looking at the crescent moon and Jupiter, I think it is. There's an alignment.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a theory about what that symbolizes.
I have heard so many that, and not even something close to this. That is so cool. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Right. I will go. So here we have also Revelation. Now, Revelation 2:21 is about the prophetess, the Nicolaitan prophetess, who was doing porneia. All right. So that obviously ties in. But these here, including the Lady Babylon porneia, that's there. All of these I've just lumped together because it's actually not known if they were 1st century or not. I quite agree with James Tabor that this middle section of Revelation, not the first 3 chapters and not the last 2, but the middle section was actually a Jewish text written as encouragement, as a word of hope, as a prophecy that Rome will fall. All right, it's all about Rome falling, because this was leading up to AD 70. Obviously, after AD 70, obviously the whole thing fell apart.
Right.
But it looks to me like that text was then picked up by these Jewish Christians and Christianized by putting those 3 letters in, the 3 chapters at the beginning, and then also the 2 at the end. All right. But in the middle section here, it's almost like they tacked in, on the throne of God and of the Christ, and of the Lamb. And they're like little afterthoughts. They aren't actually about Jesus.
Gotcha. So they're kind of just there, but it was originally a.
Yeah, it reads very well from 4 to 20. Was it 4 to 19? Not 20 and 21, but from 4 to 19 reads as very nicely as a whole text. That if you take these few little and the lambs off and Christ's out, can just read very much an encouragement to the Jews for persevering. The king, this Messiah's going to, wrap up the age, and the Rome's going to fall, and we're going to win. And you can read that in there quite easily. All right, so we move on. Now, Timothy, we've come across a lot. This is my own theory. You've got the 3 different types of people. You've got your Cain, your Abel, and your Seth. And the book of Timothy is in 3 sections. 3 times you've got the pistis ho logos, which is trustworthy the saying, or possibly faithful is the word Jesus. Probably not, because I don't know if they use the word then, maybe. And there is a sort of a chiastic arrangement. I don't really have to go into that bit there. But when you look at Paul, supposedly Paul, it's not Paul, this is the 2nd century, late 2nd century forgery, or at least around the 60s, 160s maybe, this sort of forgery, maybe slightly earlier. Yeah, maybe 150s. You've got Paul saying, these are my former sins. I was a blasphemer, a persecutor, and a hubristic man. Basically, somebody who's maliciously insolent. All right. Now, those 3 things actually could be keys to help understand the rest of the structure here. In chapter 1, you have the exhortation to stop certain people teaching false doctrines. In chapter 2, there is a woman. I want a woman to calm down. The word isn't be silent. The word is calm down and learn, and not to teach or have, to authentine a man. I talked about that a bit last time.
Right.
And then in chapter 4, you've got some people. All right. And these some people are teaching with seared consciences. They were hypocritically telling the Christians, don't get married, and so just restrictions in their diet. All right. But they're called hypocrites. Well, why? Because they are actually, the heretical teachers are these people. They were doing all the licentious stuff in secret, and yet telling the Christians, you've got to be celibate, and you've got to restrict your diets, and you've got to be ascetic. All right. And that's very hubristic. You heard when I read there that they were laughing at the ascetics for taking all that trouble for nothing. They were actually, creating something that was difficult for them to do and laughing at them because they were so keen to be doing this, thinking that was the way for their salvation. But these people knew it wasn't, and they were just laughing at it. So that's where the hubris comes in. But when you read also in 1 Timothy 9 to 10, there are actually 15 sins listed. All right? And it says the law was given not for the righteous. All right? So you've got you're not righteous, nor the lawless, nor the rebellious, nor the ungodly, nor the sinful. All right? These were all listed in 1 Tim 1, 9, 10. You can probably get it up and look at it yourself. And these describe the Canaanites.
Yes.
Okay? And then it goes on to the unholy, the profane, the father killers, the mother killers, and the murderers. Not that they describe the Abelites, but that this is what they were doing because the people that they believed were Abel types had to have this done to them. And they were sent off to be killed, to be persecuted. And basically they were doing the unholy and profane things towards them. And the father killer, mother killers, to some extent that could also be the aborting of the fetus, because the parents, the fathers and the mothers, were being the killers in order to save themselves. Yeah, it's a little bit loose there. It's a theory, okay. But also with the people that they called the Sethites, the Christians, who were interested in becoming, they were told to be sexually moral. They were told all the things that they were supposed to be doing, but at the same time, the Canaanites who were actually teaching them this is what they were doing to them. They were making them, they themselves were being sexually immoral. They were being homosexuals. They were being, this is the word andropodistes. These are trafficking. This is your traffickers.
Right.
And we saw in 2 Tim 3, they came in and stole those slave girls and took them. Yeah. Yeah. And they were lying to them all the time, saying, this is your way of salvation, but nope. And they'd make them false promises. And they weren't going to get their salvation, by doing all those things. And they were laughing their socks off at them. All right. And then you've got each of these sections has a eulogy. And Yahweh is the only supreme and good God in glory. All right. He's not being... done it again, sorry. I'll go back. And then you have the eulogy, which is an antidote to the type of God that these people were preaching. They were saying there were two gods. There was the good God and there was the demiurge. But no, Yahweh is the only supreme God, and he's a good God in glory, and it's Yahweh. It's not that there is a supreme one above him.
Right.
Yahweh is not the demiurge, and he's not a fallen angel in one of the spheres stopping you exit as you try and ascend at the end of your life. And Jesus Christ, now I put it as single because part of in chapter 2 is talking about there's only one mediator between God and man, the man Jesus Christ. And they would separate Jesus the man from the Christ spirit, and that the Christ spirit couldn't suffer. So for quite a lot of them, the Christ spirit left at his arrest. And this is one of the pictures you can have of him leaving, and becoming naked. Naked is, basically he divested himself of his, I'm not explaining this very well, but the Sethians actually have used that bit of Mark 14, 51 and 52. They actually use that part. And they say this, he drank the cup knowing that he was about to leave his body and take on his supernatural. I didn't say the words right, but they are looking at that picture in Mark 14, 51, 52, and the Sethians are interpreting it that way. The Christ spirit is about to leave.
Right.
It's about to depart. It can't suffer. It's part of God. God can't suffer, so it has to leave. But Jesus, the man, went through the suffering. All right. And then finally, Yahweh is the creator, and Christ is a human and divine. That comes out in that final eulogy. All right. So there's quite a lot in Timothy, and it's written very cleverly, as it was just creating a good order for the church. But it was also in creating a regulation about how to pick trustworthy leaders. It would stop the Gnostic leaders getting in and subverting the household, because that's in Titus. It's in the same group. That there were these people, these Jewish fables, these myths, and that they were ungodly people. And basically it's saying, look, we're going to install people that know how to keep order and not let the wrong ones in. So, the parcels were written again with the same agenda, looking at the problems and the persecution that was happening. There's an awful lot more I could talk about Timothy, but I won't. I'll move on. And here's again some instances where the hypocrisy is shown. Now, Saturnalus in Panarion, this is again Epiphanius, he's talking about Now, Saturnalus was around with Basilides, who was around in Hadrian's time. So you're looking at about the 120s. All right. So this tramp also says that the marriage and procreation are of Satan, so that majority of them abstain from meat to attract certain persons to their deceit, if you please, with this pretended asceticism. All right. It's only pretended because they were getting busy in their secret places. All right. And this accusation is upheld in Irenaeus, who remarked they deceived many by this seeming abstinence. Yet in another place, this licentiousness is what they actually practiced without a hint of enkritia, which is continence, self-control, or any sensitivity of conscience. And Ignatius Philadelphians 2:1, and remember I talked about Philadelphians before, for there are many wolves that appear worthy of credit, who by means of a pernicious pleasure carry captive those who are running towards God, but in your unity they shall have no place. So you can see the agenda here in what was added into Ignatius's letters. All right, all the same story here. Right. So, was there an Ios rite mystery in the Jesus movement? Hillman thinks there was.
The first 200 years, they were pretty awesome into the serpents and the orgies and the, I don't know, you can say Jesus making the boys drink his semen is a little bit over the top, right? Do you guys remember when they caught him and they're all like, kill him, right? Do you know what those apostles drank? According to the letters of Mary, was it the greater or the lesser? I don't know. According to those letters of Mary, he made them all try to take his semen. Hey, the Ophites are doing it, people.
Right, so he's aware of these texts. He talks about the Ophites doing it. All right. Now, the New Testament canonical texts don't have it, but they've got pushbacks against it all the time. And the apocryphal texts, really, well, you can certainly ignore them anyway, because they're all like fan fiction, and people pushing their own agendas. But Armen picks a few words and which he can use to attach his own theories to, but they're isolated, they're not in the context. He uses seal, for instance, which is was always known in that time, the seal of Christ was the seal of baptism. You were marked as his by going through, the seal is basically a stamp of ownership, it's of belonging, it's of authentication. That's all it is, the seal. But it's used somewhere else to say that the Lemnian earth tablets were sealed with the image of a goddess to say this is authentically Lemnian earth. So seal became this basically it's a placebo in which drugs were then put, and Galen ordered 1,000 of them apparently from Lemnos. So that's where the seal comes from. But it's not a drug. It was the placebo anyway. But the seal, the Christian seal is baptism, and the seal in Revelation are the wax seals on the scroll, because they're broken, 7 of them to break. It is not 7 drugs. It's the blob of wax which is sealed with that authentication. That's all it is. But this is typical of Armen with his jumping around, just to make up a drug term that will somehow fit in with ordinary text. So it doesn't have time. All right.
It shows you where his brain goes just when any word that he, even in English, can just.
It triggers a memory. Oh, I've seen that in that text. This is therefore it must apply here. Nope. Got to keep to the context. Now, the Apostolic Fathers include Ignatius, of course, which we've looked at. They, the original older ones, haven't got much in that way. Some of them have. The Didache, which is a first century text, does have that phrase about not looking for reward for judgment, and that, basically the no resurrection and no reward for righteous living. That's in the Didache. Other apostolic fathers have had texts added to them, which is what you saw in Ignatius. Right. Apologists are pushing back against the texts, against these actions, and against the people that are accusing them of the very same things that they were doing and accusing the Christians of doing. So we see it there. And the heresiologists, again, plenty of those we've read out, they are describing them and pushing back against them. And the Gnostic concepts, again, we've seen all of their ideas here. Now, this is where I'm going to be a bit longer. None of them describe their way of salvation to get their eternal life or to get their pleasure with the pleroma or whatever at all in any way or shape or form like Armen's mystery rite. There's just no mention of it. There's no text about it anywhere. And when the heresiologists are pushing back against the Gnostic teachings and the Gnostic practices, none of them are describing this.
Right.
And the apologists are not describing this. And the Apostolic Fathers are not describing this. They're all different things about docetism, about Christ being, Jesus and a Christ as two separate things, or they're pushing back against any other weird ideas. But you cannot see anywhere in any of those writings anything like you've got to produce a drug in your body and then you can have your death and resurrection. No. It's just not there. If it was a real thing, you'd see it being pushed back against.
Yeah, it would somehow be worked into the religion in a way that was openly talked about, but however, it would, if it was there, it would be a part of it, at least in the conversation about it.
Well, they were trying to root out everything that wasn't what they thought was supposed to be the original Christian way. And they were pushing back against all sorts of other weird stuff that was happening. Mm-hmm. None of them ever pushed back against this sort of thing, because there wasn't this sort of thing to push back against. It just wasn't happening.
Right.
All right. And the Greco-Roman mystery cults, apart from Eleusis, where obviously you did have imbibing a drug which sent you into some wonderful hallucination, and then you came back once it had worn off, and you felt different about death, and people were very enriched by it. Now, sometimes when they took that concoction, they died. They overdid it. It was dangerous. But for those that didn't die, they weren't given an antidote from a boy that had been produced, or from a vaginal thing. They weren't needing to give an antidote. They just came down off their high from the Kukian.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So again, even here, you don't get a death and resurrection drug-induced, right? You got a drug-induced hallucination.
Right.
When it's just ergot, probably, not much else.
Yeah.
And then they come back to it, yeah. And there are some older Hebrew texts as well. And you can pick up the onanistic sects. Rabbi Eliezer, who's a 2nd century rabbi, AD, he does commentary on the Genesis 6, where you've got the Nephilim and the angels lusting after the women, your Enoch stuff as well. And there's Hebrew texts there, but none of them have anything like this. None of them do. So if it was a real thing, they'd be talking about it and pushing back against it. They're not. But this is what Armen thinks.
The first 200 years, they were pretty awesome into the serpents and the orgies and the, I don't know. You can say Jesus making the boys drink his semen is a little bit over the top.
Sorry.
Right? Do you guys
Sorry, I forgot we'd done that one. So you can scrub that bit as well.
I was gonna say I did want to watch it again. I'm just playing.
All right. Okay. Well, I think that's the end of my presentation.
But not gay, because we want to have you obviously figure out how to use these little things now.
Oh dear. Anyway, so thank you for bearing with me. As you can hear, I've got a big course, all that talking. My interest had been very much more into this from first looking at Timothy and trying to work out what that authentine word meant. And from there, I went into all of this. I had no idea it would lead me there.
That's my same experience. You look one way, something catches your eye, and then as you can tell from my article, it leads you to this, 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 and then it's like my brain. Now, let me come back to the beginning and let me try to explain how. Yeah.
So hopefully that's been helpful for everybody. I hope having that window into Armen's process is also helpful for everybody. And, whether or not you've been educated about this semen, it's nothing that, well, I don't think it's happening now. It might be for some people somewhere. I think there are 1 or 2 people still doing this. This, is it Spirit? What's it called? Hollywood people are supposed to do this, have some sort of party where it's spirit.
That's different. Not like Scientology, but spiritual. That's not obviously part of that. But there are a few Hollywood. I know what you're talking about. They're having these spiritualism styled. The details have never really been cracked open for myself from anyone from the parties, but I think people are really, really curious. And we talked about a little bit on the show, the Santa Claus, the old Evinky reindeer herder urinating in a cup and drinking that. Mm-hmm. So in my brain, it's like, well, maybe the body does do some things. I mean, can you, I try to put myself back in the day, right? And obviously, I don't want to ever envision myself drinking any man's semen, but can you imagine if you did, and then all of a sudden you were high as hell? You would definitely think that guy's the son of God. What he did, earlier. It's like, I drank this guy's pee. Bro, I felt amazing for 6 hours. You got to come see this guy. Of course, that's my comedic brain trying to make it something else, but give me 1 second. All right. All right, cool. So my she was going to jump on for a brief moment, but he's being real fussy right now. So she was going to say hi and show you.
I'd love to see him. Oh, bring him on. Bring him on.
Just walk him in here, baby. I was like, she's been keeping up with him the whole time.
Oh, here he
Hey
comes.
guys, it's Lady Witch Doctor. My little baby. I want you to hold him like Michael Jackson over the banister. Hi, buddy.
Hello, Baldy. Hello.
Hi.
He's all wide awake.
Hey. You know how it is with babies. They never look where you want them to.
No, they don't. Oh, there he is.
Say hi, buddy.
Proud parents.
He
Glad to
looks
see
just
you.
like his mom. My daughter looked just like me when she came out. She had those George Clooney eyebrows. Well, anyway, guys, that is Stephen Ray, the golden child, if you will. So keep your eyes peeled for upcoming episodes, because we will have Allie back on as sort of a panel guest moving forward. Whenever we have somebody that she's interested in potentially talking to, opening up new theories, sharing her theories and her education with those that are misled, which we will have on the show. Also, we might be having a pretty good debate coming up. I'm not saying I'm going to pull Allie into that, but some of the material that Allie and Stephen from Cross Bible is going to be in this upcoming episode that we're hopefully going to have in the next few weeks. So definitely keep your eyes peeled. But guys, thank you so much. It's been about 3 and some change. We're not, Allie, anything you want to say to our viewers before we go?
Oh, thank you for bearing with me. You know, I had to go through a lot of material, and hopefully that's been useful to you, and that it'll help you understand a little bit more when you're watching Armen, to understand what he's doing. And to some extent, yeah, I feel for him, and that he first made those mistakes, but then I think it's totally wrong that he's carrying on to double down on them and still insist he's telling the truth. He's only reading. No, he's not. He's interpreting. He's brainwashing. He's everything else that's happening. But you know, as an interesting thing, separate to it really, is the Semen communion and what the Gnostic groups did used to do. So anyway, thank you very much, Stephen, for.
This was one of the greatest and probably one of the best interviews that we've had. So I'm really excited for people to watch this. Without saying too much more, guys, we'll catch you next.